How's it going, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar. Welcome to Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And today we are kicking off our newest poll. We've done the Marvel Most Wanted reprints, Epics and Omnis. We've done the Most Wanted Marvel Omnis that have never existed. And we've done the Most Wanted DC Omnis and Absolutes to be reprinted. So that takes us to the Most Wanted DC Omnis that have never existed 2025 edition. That's right. We've got a lot of books that you all get to vote on, and we're going to go through them and explain the rules. But before I get started, I can never do this alone because what fun is that? Listening to me talk for like 2 hours explaining everything. I'd get bored with myself. So to my left is my partner in crime, Crisis with a K. Can't even spell crisis.
No, I'm no good for anything, but I am good for obsessively mapping the books and titles of DC's universe. And boy, we've got over 650 for you today. Actually, the DC poll is now bigger than the Marvel poll, and we'll get into why. But I'm so happy to be here. You all know that this is my international holiday 2 months that goes on where I get to actually hang out with Tigereyes in email and cultivate all of the books so we can do the poll that is named for him and his 12 years of polling, actually 13 this year, including Marvel, and the second year for DC.
So, yes, and speaking of Tigereyes, the next host is none other than...
How y'all doing? Happy to be here. You know, I have no social media, but thanks for having me again.
Thank you for... I swear, if I hear Blood Hunt one more time... And... last but certainly not least, the man behind the scenes, the man that helps me run this channel. And I could not be doing a lot of the things that I do without him. And that is myself, the Uncanny Omar. How's it going, everybody? No, I'm just kidding. It is DomofX. Dom, how are you, my friend?
Oh, good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. This is the first time I think I'm ever going to be talking alongside Tigereyes and get to see... with all of the email threads that I have been in the last 2 months, seeing the endless work that Crisis and Tigereyes have put together, it is a lot, but we hope that you guys are able to vote. As I'm going to steal this from Crisis, but as Crisis said, voting is the sexiest thing that you can do in a democracy, so we hope that you get to do that later, but of course, I am thankful to be here, and thank you for having me on.
We limit who will be at the kickoff, and then the after party is when those gentlemen will be joining us. So we'll be talking about that here in a little bit. But the kickoff has to go fast, right? Because, I mean, there can't be a panel of 8 of us because we all want to talk about our favorite books. Otherwise, this is going to take like 8 hours to do. Some of you want to hear us to go for 8 hours, and other of us probably need some sleep. But, hey, I think I mapped sideways. Didn't I map it sideways? I'm pretty sure I did.
It is absolutely on there, 100%. So part of why the poll got bigger, and we can talk about this for a second, is y'all came through with the suggestions last year. There were over 300 suggestions. Now, it proved that some of you are in states that don't have high reading comprehension scores, because some of the suggestions were things on the poll. But you know what? I would rather have you re-suggest something that was already on the poll than totally miss something. But of those 360, well over 150 of them were things that we missed or could have expanded, or short runs that could have been included in other books. So we've added so much more to the poll this year. If you were looking for the Adventures of Bob Hope, it is on the poll this year. If you were looking for a variety of war and Western comics, they are on the poll this year. And if you were looking for Vertigo comics, they are on the poll this year. We did a deep dive on anything that it seems like DC has the rights to print or has the art for in their library. And if it fulfilled either of those two things, it went on the poll. And a lot of that came from you. So if you're in the chat right now going, did you catch my suggestion? It was caught. It was definitely caught.
Once again, I like to state that the thoughts of Crisis does not represent the thoughts of this channel. I will not be insulting any of my viewers unless you're asking for it. I will only be insulting my panelists. I am here for 8 hours if need be. Well, thank you for that, Nick, and thank you for the super chat. Yeah, man, you were just like, we didn't even started and you already busted on people. So we did this last year and we kicked it off. We sent the list to DC and they were kind enough to reply back. It was Katie that actually replied back. Thank you. I sent this to the right people. This year it's a little bit different because there's somebody that I've been talking to, and we're actually meeting tomorrow with another one of the collected editions editor. And I don't want to reveal any names yet because I don't know if they want to be known. And once he tells me it's okay, then I will be more than happy to name him. But we're going to be talking about the list that I sent him of the most wanted DC Omni reprints and absolutes. He got back to me on that. He said, thank you. Look at the list. And he watched the video So I don't know if they're watching today, but in case they are, we love DC Comics on this channel. And the thoughts of Crisis did not represent the thoughts of Neil.
You have to say
Look, I
that
don't need
twice.
I don't need a restraining order from another comic company.
Just
Okay,
in
I'm in
case,
enough
just
trouble
in
with Marvel.
Okay, so it is very important to vote. So let your friends know. Let everybody know. Don't let the Indiana Jones people know. We got all right. So Crisis, anything else before we get started?
No, I think we're going to talk about it in the first few slides, y'all.
All right. Let's do it then. Let's actually go ahead and present this. Everybody ready? Smash that like button, please. That goes for oh, wait. No, the slides will show us. I forgot we got people to think. But the slides will be. All right. Most wanted DC Omnis. Again, these are the ones that have never existed. And you all get to vote. Slide number 2. Take us there, Crises.
Well, I know that you're all going to ask a lot of times, so voting will begin at the end of the stream. At the end of the stream, if you're watching live, we will put the link in the chat. We will put the link in the video description. The link will say that it's live, and then you can vote. Up until then, you're just looking at all the options to get ready. It's like before they fire the pistol at a big marathon race, we're all just at the starting line, okay? The voting is going to be open just for 8 days, so slightly shorter than the Marvel poll, so you cannot linger as long as you did on the Marvel poll, and there were votes coming in to the very last second on that one. On this one, I would say vote early, but don't vote often, because Jim, our poll master, will find you out.
Already threatening people. What's in the poll?
Well, I kind of already gave this away. We have Vertigo, we have licensed properties, we have WB properties. The one big change that those of you who follow this really closely will notice is we didn't do as much ahead. So like last year, a great example, we had Tom King's run volume 1 and volume 2 on Batman. Then seeing the actual volume 1 that was released by DC, it turns out there's probably going to be 3 volumes. So we really got rid of any of the ambiguity of that, and we only mapped volume 1s. The only time we mapped ahead is if there's an explicit creator change or story change that would signal when the next book would start, and if DC conceivably could release them out of order. So is DC ever going to release Tom King volume 3 before Tom King volume 2? No, they are not. But did DC release Wonder Woman by Greg Rucka this year before they released Wonder Woman by Luke Ross? Yes, they did. So our guiding principle on the poll, especially for DC that doesn't have Marvel Masterworks for us to go by, is that the omnibuses need to be able to exist on their own without a preceding volume in order for us to put them on the poll. And even with that, knocking out over 50 books from last year, we still grew in size.
Can I vote now? How about now? Now. I'm about to pin this so people don't keep asking the question. As a matter, James, can you pin like a comment that's like, hey, poll will be open soon. So let's keep on going. Talk to me.
Well, I thought maybe Dom might want to talk about this because Dom is our DC solicit captain. Dom, out of the top 20 from last year, DC announced 6 of those books, which is not a bad ratio. What are the books that we've got from the top 20 from last year's poll?
Yeah, it's 30% of the top 20 we can see is on here, and we are going to see it will come out, at some point. And the big one for a lot of people, obviously, being Tom King's Batman run, which has ended up number 1 on many polls online, including ours, which is absolutely insane. But seeing titles such as Greg Rucka Wonder Woman, which just came out last week, phenomenal to see. Suicide Squad by Ostrander also in the month of May. But getting to see stuff like Gail Simone's Bird of Prey, Warlord Volume 1, and Shade the Changing Man is a part of not only the most recent DC catalog, but also the future DC catalog. It's such a, I think, very clear sign from DC that they are putting absolutely no stoppages on anything at all. It's a very, very great sign, I think, for the company to see that a lot of the books that we want are finally being printed, and with much more to come.
And chat regular Saz Murph points out, actually, I missed highlighting one here. Spectre by John Ostrander also announced.
Yes, that is correct.
That's actually 7. So here's the slides so you don't all get twisted. These are all of the things that we're going to be going through today. There's a lot. So this is everything you see on here is one of the groups that we're going to be talking about today at some point. And the other thing to know is we are going to be occasionally repeating some books. So if there's one book that's Batgirl and the Birds of Prey from DC Rebirth, we might talk about that on the Batgirl slide and on the Birds of Prey slide. It doesn't mean it's going to be on the poll twice. It means to give you slides where you can focus on your voting for each character or team. We're trying to include everything that is associated with that character or team.
Everybody got that? You yell at crises if you don't understand why the books are in here 3
Why
times.
am I plural crises today? Is it the hair?
like
is it
it.
because it's extending out of frame?
It's a little classier than just crisis. Crisis is chaotic. Crises is like, ooh.
Well, I mean, it's also DC, so we need to specify the. I don't know.
True. I like
Yeah,
that.
there are multiple crises to account for at DC. That is true.
We were cooking together in my cornholio. Can anybody do cornholio's voice? No, wait,
Are you
no.
correcting
You know
me?
what cornholio is?
I know about him.
You know.
I
know.
Yeah, but I can't do the voice, man.
Let me. Peter was on. Peter, let me hear it.
I was ready.
Do it.
What is he's? I can't pull the shirt up over my hair, but he's like, oh, are you threatening me? It's kind of like a little bit Yoda. I'm going too Yoda. It's too Frank Oz.
That was great. That was completely worth it. Let me get this other super chat and we can go on. Omar, please tell DC to have their Omnis, Compendiums, and DC Finance to be available for purchase digitally. Use your sexy powers of persuasion. Dom, is that true? They don't have any of that stuff digitally?
No. The only things that are put on digitally via Kindle or Amazon, whatever you want to call it nowadays, are their thin trade paperbacks. If you are trying to find any of their nice, thick, not volumes or whatever you want to call it, like those single trade paperbacks, they are not available for purchase.
But often the contents are available on DC Universe Infinite, aren't they, Dom?
They are. DC Universe Infinite does have a slew of what they like to call omnibuses on their digital side, but those omnibuses are typically the deluxe editions, the complete collections. Sometimes those omnibuses that they like to call it on the digital side are the unwraps, the black and white versions of the book that were previously released. But as far as those bigger collections, they are not available otherwise elsewhere.
Thank you for the explanation. Okay, let's continue. Special thanks. Okay, who wants to give the special thanks? Not everybody get up at once, please. Okay.
Well, I just do so much talking already, but I will do some special thanks since Omar has
I feel like
no thanks, no gratitude from Omar.
You worked really close with these people, so I wanted somebody that was like with them, you know?
In the trenches.
In the trenches, my friend. Yes.
So look, this would not exist other than with the people on the stream without our pollster in chief, BFF Nut, aka Jim. He does all of the near mint condition polling. He does all of the data and statistics in the background, and he's a real comics lover as well. You get to hang out with him and talk to him if you're on the near mint condition Patreon Discord, which is a lot of fun, and I suggest everybody jump on there who is a member of the Patreon. DomofX, who's actually here and gets to get thanked live on air for doing all of the thumbnails and graphics, and Taylor Talks Comics, who built the entire shell of this presentation with all the graphics and formatting. Could not happen without Taylor. Also, we had a special thing this year. We did a special public consultation on the list to make sure that we hadn't missed things and titles were clear. And so that went out in public for a whole week to members of the Reddit Omnibus Collectors Forum and to members of the collectededitions.com message board on Tappa Talk. They gave fantastic suggestions and caught a lot of things that we missed. Special shout out to Cody Summers on the Omnibus Collectors Board, who is the moderator, for letting that happen and for giving some great suggestions. And of course, folks from the Near Mint community, so many people chipped in, but Brand is our kind of DC mapping consultant in chief. Larry's Library still picking off stuff that we missed this year, and Lars did a complete reorganization of a few of his favorite lines. I'm sure you can guess which ones they were.
Okay, so thank you all so much for helping out all the people, and yes, including the other communities, Collected Editions and the Omnibus Collectors. And of course, Tigereyes, who's here. So, yes, people apparently know Lars really well. Okay, moving on to, oh, wow, we're ready. Gio, are you in the chat? Gio?
It's going to take a lot to drag me away from you.
Wow.
We're doing karaoke now?
No.
Demonetized. All right, Aquaman, separated by golden, silver, bronze age. Wow. You know, Aquaman is lacking in that department. I remember there was a Silver Age Omni that was in the catalog, but never fully solicited. And then it got changed into deluxe hardcovers. And then, of course, the post-crisis, the Flashpoint, which is the stuff that happens before. Oh, look. Actually, Peter, why don't you guide us through here? Because I think your lines are perfect. Like, you guide us through here.
Okay, so look, we're not going to go over every single bullet of every title. This is just to get you familiar with what's on the poll. For golden, silver, and bronze, as Omar mentioned, we did have a solicited Silver Age Omnibus, which was canceled. And actually, we've changed where we think of the Silver Age starting because of the DC Finest. Previously, Aquaman Silver Age was treated as it started later than other Silver Ages, but the Finest has kind of corrected that. And so now I think that Silver Age Omnibus would probably start where this would start. But there's plenty of material to collect before Crisis. And then after Crisis, there's actually some Aquaman material prior to Peter David. So that's why we have our directional comments there in the brackets. So Aquaman, the post-Crisis Omnibus, actually is all before Peter David, although he did write one of the series in there, the Chronicles of Atlantis. And then we have continuing from Peter David. And honestly, there aren't that many Aquaman omnibuses. So other than the Geoff Johns New 52 omnibus, other than Peter David, there's all of Aquaman still to cover. And so that is represented by your choices this year.
So thank you all so much for that. And I've completely forgot about the run that happens after Geoff Johns.
Oh, come on. Jeff Parker's run? It's good stuff, Omar.
It's really good.
It's really good.
No, I've read it. I just completely forgot that.
There are some moments where I'm like, I like Jeff Parker's run more than Geoff Johns' run. I'm not saying all, but sometimes I do feel that way.
No, I get it. I just forgot that it wasn't collected in Omni format because I, for some reason, thought it was. And then Bunn and Jurgens. Kelly Sue the Conic, you separated it as volume 2, huh?
Well, her run is long enough that it kind of, and Abnett's run itself is like 40 plus issues, has a crossover with Suicide Squad. So and the Kelly Sue stuff. Yeah, and Justice League. So the Kelly Sue stuff would not fit. Plus, Kelly Sue's run is it's its own beast, and it's very, very good. I'm a big fan.
I agree.
Would you have put Chronicles, the Atlantis Chronicles, anywhere?
That would be in the post-Crisis Omnibus that fits prior to Peter David. Even though Peter David wrote it, it's not in Aquaman by Peter David. Mm-hmm. So that happened between 1986 and 1992.
Okay, I'm in. Batgirl. Oh, yeah, baby. Barbara Gordon Oracle, the Omni. I love that you call it the Oracle Omni. That's awesome. And, the best Batgirl ever, Cassandra Cain. 2 Omnis out of that. I'm curious if you added the miniseries and some of the Titans East in that second volume, but we can talk about mapping. Where can people find mapping again, in case they're wanting to know exact mapping?
So on the link at the top of the poll, when we open the poll, there'll be a link to Crushing Crisis that has the full list. If you just want to control F up and down the list to find all of your favorite titles, and links to all of the posts where we mapped all of these books. I wasn't the only mapper. It came from Lars, from Brand. Dom did a few of them last year that are still on the list. Tigereyes did about half of them last year that are on the list. And all of those mappings are on Crushing Crisis for you to peruse at length if you have these kinds of questions. We always say it's a titles poll, not a mapping poll. So you're not voting for whether or not we remembered your favorite Batgirl one-shot. You're voting to get Batgirl Cassandra Cain Volume 1. Now, I will remind everybody that on the poll last year was the number 2, and the number 1, Tom King Volume 1, now exists. So Cassandra Cain, will it be our number 1 omnibus this year? It was not far behind. They were trading 1 and 2 throughout the poll. So it would not be surprising to see Cassandra Cain at the top of the poll this year.
Tell people we want the Kelly Puckett and Damian Scott to run to go home, guys. We need it.
The DC Finest came out, and people have been asking, isn't it like DC Finest and they're not going to do an Omni? And I always like to point out that they just released a Suicide Squad DC Finest and a Suicide Squad by John Ostrander Omni within like a month or so. So I think it's much like the way Marvel is handling the Marvel Epics and Marvel Omnis. They realize that there's different collectors for different formats, and I'm all here for it. And
same goes for Silver Age Doom Patrol. We've had the Silver Age Doom Patrol DC Omnibus reprint, and we have also had the DC Finest Doom Patrol first volume, if you may, for those trade paperback sets.
And there was something that I wanted to check out here. I'm trying to move my image to the bottom, but for some reason it's locked.
They said there's some layout shenanigans going on StreamYard right now. There was this.
They are investigating.
They're investigating. I love it. Somebody was asking about Brubaker in oversized hardcover. Has it all been released in oversized hardcover? No, there's quite a lot that has not been released in oversized hardcover.
Got a lot of Batman, man.
Yeah, he wrote a lot of Batman. And then there was that.
So did Brian K. Vaughan there during that same era. But
they could do that all in one. Okay, speaking of Batman, what is up with this?
That's why I'm trying to segue, Omar. You wouldn't let me.
I was getting you there. All right, Batman. All the Golden Age Batman done.
Yeah, Golden Age Batman is complete. Somebody in the chat asked, is DC even doing Golden, Silver, and Bronze anymore? Absolutely, yes, they are. We just got Golden Age Wonder Woman Volume 6 in the last couple of months. They've solicited some Silver Age books, including Wonder Woman 3. Wonder Woman's having a fantastic year. So Silver Age is not done for. Bronze Age is still happening, and they've even cracked into the pre-crisis 80s with books like the Detroit era of Justice League. So all these are very much live, but if you want to make them more live, vote for them. Don't assume that DC will or won't do something. So in the Silver and Bronze Age, we could just get, a lot of people want the expanded Black Casebook, which originally was just a trade paperback that was released during Grant Morrison's run, but they want to have that with like all of the stuff that led to Morrison, almost as like a Morrison companion. So we put that on the poll. Batman does have one Silver Age volume, so we'd start with Silver Age Volume 2 is the next one. DC could just jump ahead to the Bronze Age. They have jumped ahead eras before and other characters in the past, so we could start there, and that has a lot of the Dennis O'Neil material that a lot of people are interested in. And there's also Batman in the 1980s. It starts with not anybody, not Conway or Munch, but the last 2 volumes of that would be Doug Munch. And so we didn't want to put them separately because DC probably just needs to kick off the 1980s up until Crisis. And then post-Crisis, we're really just talking about filling in gaps, right? We could have all the graphic novels. We could start post-Crisis in the same place that the DC Finest line started with Year 1, just after Crisis. Oh, here we go. Starting with Batman 401. Right? And Detective Comics 568. So that's a place that an omnibus could start well, mapped in the beautiful, perfect way of this book. And then we've got to fill in around things that are already collected. So Legends of the Dark Knight was very, very popular. I believe it was in the top 20 last year because that book is set at all different times in Batman's history. So it's not just like you need the other Batman books to appreciate it. Same for Shadow of the Bat, often set off to the side of other Batman stories. But then we need Nightfall Aftermath, and we still need Contagion Legacy, and we need what comes after Contagion Legacy to get to Road to No Man's Land.
Not wasting any votes on Batman. They will get made eventually. This is true. This is very true. Yeah. But we have been waiting 18 years for Batman post-crisis Omni. Just saying. Or at least maybe it's just me that has been waiting that long. Same for Legends of the Dark Knight. And part 2 of 3. 2000 Morrison. Go ahead.
So actually, Omar, you and Dom probably, and Tigereyes probably all know this material better than me. There's not a ton of it left. What do we need to get to Morrison?
Well, you started with the Contagion and Legacy, which I love that mapping. But moving into the 2000, we do have that new Gotham era. This is the stuff that happens in between, No Man's Land and Murder Fugitive. That will also have the Officer Down crossover. Mm-hmm. And then you also have it by Creator-centric with Ed Brubaker. And I want to note this here. It skips issues. What's wrong with you?
He's like the one modern creator on Batman that now that we have the Dini Omnibus, people are like, but why can't we have Brubaker? So that we really didn't put a lot of skipsy stuff on this poll, but the demand for that one is overwhelmingly loud. And it did well last year.
And then taking us to the Gotham Knight series. And this is could omit the black and white material. Never.
Because it's already in the black and white omnibus. All 49 issues.
What if I don't know that? What if I don't know that?
That's an Omar problem.
That's an Omar problem. Wow. Okay. Road to War. I love this title. Road to War Games by Brubaker Azzarello. Fits between Murder Fugitive and War Games. Includes skipped issues. That would be nice, because I would love to have this incomplete.
He wants Broken City in omnibus format, is what he said.
I do not. I hate that story so much, but I would take it. Yes.
Well, right now it's abandoned because of the way the omnibuses are mapped. Yeah,
because it was available in a deluxe edition.
It was available in deluxe, but we've never had it in an omnibus format.
Yeah,
and that's one of the challenges on the poll. Even going back to the Aquaman slide, which you don't actually have to go back, is DC much more than Marvel will still print deluxes of things that are 8 to 16 issues, rather than making like a slim omnibus. Like DC would never do the Godzilla omnibus. They would just call that a deluxe. So sometimes we are mapping things that in your mind, you're like, yeah, but that part of it's going to come out as a separate deluxe. And that's fine. But listing deluxes is out of the scope of the poll. So we kind of just assume it's going to be an omnibus until we get a deluxe that holds that space within the line. And that certainly might be the case for that Batman story.
Where do you all expect these books to fit on my shelf? Well, that is one of our Patreon tiers where you fly Peter, Dom, and I to your house, Michael, and we will throw your books away to fit better books on your shelf.
That's
and
right.
It's up to us to decide what is trash and worth throwing away and what is good to keep.
And included in that subscription, you will get to hear me talk about Pokemon for 1.5 hours during the book tour.
And there goes any of that Patreon tier. But you will hear Peter and I argue over what is good and what isn't. A lot.
And we will put together no more than one 5x5 Calyx shelf for you in the process.
I'll be drinking a beer while they're putting it together. I'll be guiding you guys. All right, moving on to page number 3.
Well, hold on. Then we get to the Martian.
You can do
Whoa. We haven't talked about Dick Bat yet.
Okay. Wow. Okay, sorry. Let's
someone that doesn't love Dick.
So excuse me.
So
that's right.
I started the movement. Hashtag forever Dick. Thank you very much. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so look, we've got these beautiful 3 Martian Batman omnibuses, but collecting around the Martian stuff, which of course dips out of 4 different titles, we do not have it all perfectly collected. So the Dini omnibus actually does a decent job of that, but a lot of people don't like all the gaps because some of the gaps are also gaps in the Martian book. So you have to think about each of the books in this section as they kind of could serve 2 masters here. You could just be voting for it because you want Dini gapless. You could be voting it because you want a Martian companion to go aside his volume 1 to give all the stuff that's not by Martian in that era, right? Same for Batman, Dick Grayson Batman. That would basically be the whole Nightwing, Dick Bat period of Batman, of all the stories that he was Batman in other than Martian. So that's kind of Martian Companion Volume 2. Yeah. And then finally, Bruce Wayne comes back, spoilers, and that's Martian Volume 3. And that last one would have all of that immediate pre-Flashpoint material, some of which has been in deluxe, but has never been comprehensively collected together. And then interstitial with that, there's also Batman Confidential and also Batman The Dark Knight. Oh, sorry, one new 52 omnibus snuck up and got in here. That should be on the next slide.
But if you are asking for Judd Winnick, Tony S. Daniel Batman, or if you just want those filler and gaps on Batman and Robin right after Grant, this is what you are going to be voting for these particular omnibuses.
Yep, perfect, Tom.
May I?
Sure.
We got 650 plus books. I just wanted to hurry it
you know.
New so 52 era.
Yeah, that first one on here kind of spans both. Scott Snyder starts writing Batman before New 52. So there is some, if we wanted a Scott Snyder companion, that's like all of Snyder's Batman outside of the 2 Snyder Batman omnibuses, that would start a little bit before New 52. But then also we need the rest of Detective Comics, which was only collected halfway in that first omnibus. And then the one from the other side that I mistakenly put there, which should be here, which is Batman The Dark Knight, the New 52 omnibus. And then we have Rebirth to Present Day. We already have Tom King Volume 1, but we need Tom King Volume 2. We always already have Tynion Volume 1. We need Tynion Volume 2. There's Batman Urban Legends and Brave and the Bold, which were anthology series anchored by a Batman story, but with plenty of other things from the Batman family. They could be collected. Batman from Chip Zdarsky, which recently completed. It could all fit into 1 or maybe 2 omnibuses. It could include the Knight. Batman Detective Comics by Round V, which a lot of people are reading now that it's finally all out in collected edition. And that's a perfect omnibus size. And then also, and this one came from Cody Summers on Reddit, Batman and Robin by Joshua Williamson. So Joshua Williamson kind of like wrote a Robin run, and then he wrote the Batman versus or the Batman and Robin Shadow War crossover, and then also he wrote Batman and Robin 2023. And so it actually forms kind of one complete story about Batman and Damian Wayne. And so that actually fits perfectly into one omnibus, and it catches a small gap in Batman between Tynion and Chip Zdarsky.
Okay. Batman non-continuity.
This is more your area than mine, my friend.
So, such as David Lapham's City of Crime. In my head, it is non-continuity. Batman, the animated series, Gotham Adventures, Volume 1 of 2. Wow, they did that many, huh? And then, of course, the animated series, Batman Adventures, the continued adventures. This is the stuff that happened after that original series that has been available in Omni format, and the follow-up that's available in a omnibus as well, the Batman and Robin Adventures. And the Batman animated series, The Adventures Continue from 2020. Who was the writer on that one, Dom? The 2020 to 2023.
I think it was co-written with Burnett and Dini.
So Burnett was still on the book. Cool.
Yeah, they were still co-writing.
And then Batman. Oh yes, Elseworlds. Although in Elseworlds Omni, that would be everything would be even better. But
they've got those 3 trades, right?
I know.
So
You
already have it mapped. Yeah,
I know. I just want to let people know ahead of time. The One Bat Day Complete Saga, which has been available in an
standard size hardcover and box set.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
This is why Dom is here. Dom knows.
The Batman Strikes, based on the Batman animated series, 2004 to 2008, and that's the Batman with the voice of Tuxedo Mask doing the voice of Batman in that series. Batman the Brave and the Bold animated series, Omni.
My Batman that I grew up with as a kid. We needed an omnibus format.
Best episode is the Aquaman singing episode.
2009
to 2013. What's Tuxedo Mask? I know, Josh. Why didn't you ask instead of typing, Josh? Before there was Batman, there was Tuxedo Mask. Watch somebody clip that and I get destroyed on TikTok. Batman the Dark Knight Saga by Frank Miller includes Year One. Year One is a continuity, Peter.
Some people are like, yeah, Year One like launches that Batman. So Year One is the continuity part, and then all the rest of it is Dark Knight. That's how people want it. So that's the note. Okay. At least they could include Year One. Potentially, skeptically, could include Year One.
And
indecisively
have been asking, including Sean Gordon Murphy, is White Knight Universe by Sean Murphy, the 2017 to 2023, including all the miniseries. Nothing left behind.
No issue left behind.
Batman Family. Or did anybody want Josh?
Doesn't have Robins, and this doesn't have Catwoman. They have their own slides.
Because they're that cool.
They are that cool.
Finally, the Azrael Omni, Agent of the Bat by Dennis O'Neil, 1990. Are you including Sword of Azrael in that?
Hell yes.
Why better. You? Azrael by Fabian Nicieza and David Hine. That's the 2009. I didn't realize it went on for that long because they didn't do that many trade paperbacks, unfortunately. And the Beyond Omni, which has been released in a compendium, correct? The classic series, but then the Beyond by the 2010 and 2015 series has not. That stuff is awesome, man. The Dan Jurgens stuff.
Yes, I love that run.
And finally, following up, the Batwoman by Greg Rucka and J.H. Williams is the Andreyko and Bennett, which is freaking. There's some really good stories in there
with nice art too from Steve Epting and some of the stories too.
Yeah, and I love that new Steve Epting art style too. The Huntress Earth 2 Bronze Age, Huntress Helena Bertinelli, and World's Finest, the New 52 by Paul Levitz, 2012 to 2015. And moving on to Bronze Age, Batman Family, Bronze Age Omni. And again, you can find the mappings at Crisis. The link. Do we always leave the link in the description of the video?
If it's on the top of the poll.
Okay. It's on the top of the poll, everybody, just in case. Batman Family Year One. This is the Robin Year One, Batgirl Year One, Robin, Nightwing, and Batgirl. You're not including the Batman and Robin Year One in there, huh?
Well, that new Batman and Robin Year One is by Mark Waid, and it might fit in better collected with his World's Finest because it absolutely is of a similar tone to the Batman and Robin stuff in the World's Finest. So since that's still ongoing and since World's Finest is still ongoing, we stayed away from that.
Yeah, it's also only 12 issues, and I doubt, 12 issues is going to make it into Omni. But hey, you never know.
The Batman Streets of Gotham, the 2009 to 2011 series. Tell me a little bit about this one. Dom, random.
It was a lot of those issues were included in the Dini omnibus because Dini wrote a lot of those stories and side stuff. It isn't your Main Street Batman stuff. There is Damian Wayne appearances in there. But if you want that two-year run for as a stop filler for the Gap, or maybe you want to read some of the issues that Dini didn't work on, this is your perfect opportunity to purchase that or pull in for that omnibus so you can maybe purchase it later.
Okay. And then the Batwing New 52 Omni, which was in the catalog at one time, and then it was pulled and made into a
Trade
fat
paperback.
trade
Yeah,
paperback.
very fat trade paperback.
Future State Gotham by Joshua Williamson. What is this series?
This is part of the Future State, what do you want to call it, mini event initiative in 2020, where Joshua Williamson and a couple of other different creators were allowed to create their own different versions of certain characters. Joshua got a couple of books, and Gotham was his main target. But this spins out of Future State. It was his actual own run for a good 2 years. Like, I kept seeing this on the shelf in my comic store, as Joshua wanted to continue building off that world that they all created in 2020.
Okay. And then Talon, the New 52 Omni by James Tynion. Gotham Academy, which is quite excellent. Go ahead, Dom.
Yeah, Talon, forgotten series, honestly. I am surprised that more people haven't put in a spotlight on this, but this does feature James Tynion's early DC work as sort of a spin-off from the Court of the Owls saga, if you will, highlighting one of the characters from said Court of the Owls. Gotham Academy is absolutely fantastic. I mean, that was like, I love Maps. She is excellent as far as characters are concerned, and it's one of my favorite Becky Cloonan books like ever. So I would definitely suggest, if you guys haven't read it, read it, because it is awesome.
And then the Ghostmaker and Batman Incorporated, and I Am by John Ridley. Is there enough material for an Omni?
Yeah.
Wow. It's crazy. Oh, lordy. Batman Villains. Joker to Modern Age Omni, Volume 1. He's had one Bronze Age, right? Or was it 2?
He did. And the difference is, of course, in the Bronze Age, he's got his own series, which that omnibus collects in full. Here, this would probably be skipping around to more kind of greatest hits types arcs, because he doesn't really have a home necessarily in that point. And also, some of his big hits are events. So like that probably wouldn't collect all of Underworld Unleashed. That would just be an omnibus on its own. But clearly there's tons of big Joker stories in the 80s and 90s, and people ask for it. As opposed to Joker by Tynion and Rosenberg, this is kind of a vote for it at your own risk, because we don't know the map of what the Tynion Volume 2 omnibus will include. It could have a lot of, or even maybe all of this material, but there is actually enough of it between all the Joker series in that period that it would make a fine, fully rounded omnibus of its own. Same for Punchline. Some of that is covered by the Tynion omnibuses, but if you map it, there is enough Punchline material that it could work on its own. And then all the rest of these books, people variously ask for them. Some of these villains, have more complete stories than others. Poison Ivy is later. She's on the Harley slides. But these are all omnibuses that would be similar to those Batman Arkham books that they put out with the greatest hits of these villains, but it would collect kind of all of their major stories in every one of these villains. And the reason we picked these villains is because they easily could get above the 700-page range by having all of their best stories.
I mapped some of those, so go and vote. Birds of Prey.
The big news, of course, is that we have the Birds of Prey by Gail Simone omnibus, which was briefly canceled for them to explicitly resolicit. So it's not going away. They just needed to pull it and resolicit, I think, with some minor changed.
It's a $25 increase, and they're adding a couple of other series on top of the only Birds of Prey issues that were part of the Edelweiss catalog.
Nice. So that's the only one that we've got from everything on this catalog, which means we still could need Birds of Prey by Chuck Dixon, Volume 1. Could that push all the way through the Morin Hernandez material that comes between Dixon and Gail Simone? Maybe, but that would probably be in a Volume 2. The Dixon material, there's a lot. It's almost certainly 2 volumes. Then after Simone, there's Tony Bedard, there's Sean McKeever, and then Gail Simone comes back. So we need another volume that comes after this first Gail Simone volume. And then there's Birds of Prey in the New 52, which is the one that has Katana on the team. There's Birds of Prey Black Canary and Batgirl, because Black Canary has some solo material at the end of New 52, and then the title becomes Batgirl and the Birds of Prey in the Rebirth era. And then Black Canary has a lot of omnis of her own. There's plenty of early years with the Earth 2 Golden Age Black Canary. There's Green Arrow and Black Canary, the Bronze Age omnibus that would follow the Green Arrow, Green Lantern omni with all of their side appearances in all sorts of anthology titles for over 20 years. And then there's also Black Canary after Crisis. She was in Action Comics Weekly and had a number of miniseries all the way to the beginning of Birds of Prey. And then finally, there's the Green Arrow and Black Canary run where they get married by Judd Winnick.
Oh, Punchline, you all have lost your damn minds.
You have no idea, John, how many Punchline fans I know.
Yeah, we did a poll and Punchline beat out Iron Man like, oh my gosh, by 50% of the votes went to Punchline. Most people were like, who is Iron Man? Which is crazy. It was so mean. I'm so sorry, John. I shouldn't have gone that far. Killer Moth didn't get his own cartoon show. No big Kite Man. Is that what you're saying? Saturday morning?
I love Killer Moth, man. Don't ever put my guy down.
So does my daughter. She asked for her birthday a Killer Moth toy, and I'm like, what? That's come from?
Who doesn't like Jury Walker? Characters. Do not answer that question. But we got Blue Beetle.
Blue Beetle, Golden, Silver, and Bronze Age. These are all different characters. Oh wow, you got this map by Captain Atom and the Blue Beetle. That's the Charlton years. That's
People
awesome.
Want the Charlton stuff, and we recently got a solicitation
DC Finest,
the DC Finest, a 368 pager. Nonetheless, I know it is on the little end of the short side, but we do at least know somewhere that they do have the ability to print these out, which is awesome.
Yeah, and Blue Beetle appears in a lot of backups in Captain Atom's comics in those Charlton years. And so we had it mapped separately, and they were both suspiciously slim maps. And so we realized, especially since that's not a huge vote getter, they would probably be a little bit more popular together. This was Lars helped out with all of these classic mappings. And then in the modern day, there's the post-crisis Blue Beetle stuff that started in 1986. There's Jamie Rye's beginnings of the Blue Beetle starting in 2006. And then all of the modern Blue Beetle, which I think starts slightly before Rebirth. Maybe it starts right after Rebirth, but it stretched on and on all the way to a Dawn of DC series in 2023. There's Blue Beetle Graduation Day in there, and that kind of all forms one big arc for the character.
The Keith Giffen Rebirth stuff, and then moving on to Josh Trujillo and Adrian Gutierrez's Blue Beetle subsequent runs.
Nailed it.
Jaime's the man. I love that kid. Catwoman. Not part of the Bat family. She got booted. Early years.
She's got her own stuff.
That's
Golden
right.
Age and Silver Age Omni. And then you're going with the post-crisis stuff. So the stuff at the very beginning during Nightfall, right? Yeah. Volume 1 by Jim Ballant, which again, it will be available in the Omni format. And then by Will Pfeiffer, which is the follow-up to the Ed Brubaker East End Omni. And the post-crisis stuff. Catwoman New 52, which was...
That's Judd Winnick and Nascenti.
Yeah. And then the Rebirth Omni, which is Joelle Jones and Rom V. So, some good stuff. Tigereyes, are you a fan of Catwoman?
I enjoy
Let me rephrase that. The comics?
I enjoy the character. I have not read a lot of this stuff on here. I read the Balance stuff growing up.
Yeah, I think we all did.
I didn't.
Boy, that was shit.
You weren't born yet when it
tell us that.
Hey, your evergreen panelist got a chance to duck you down, Omar. I need my chance every now and then.
Okie dokie. Moving on to Deathstroke, the Terminator. Tell me a little bit about this guy. Anybody.
Oh, it works. So we got Deathstroke the Terminator Volume 2, which does follow up to Volume 1. I am quite surprised at how popular the character is, even with some of his missteps. I'll just keep it that. But he is a very popular character, and we do have an Omnibus Volume 1 of it. So the second volume would obviously collect the second half of the Marv Wolfman run. The New 52 Omnibus, now we have the Tony S. Daniel Omnibus out that is a creator-centric run, which sort of features him, fighting against the gods, but Higgins did get a chance to write Deathstroke during the New 52 as one of the 52 launch books, if you may. And Deathstroke Inc. We talked about this a little bit earlier, Crisis, in the with the Batman and Robin Omni by Joshua Williamson. But in the Shadow War, or at least to the lead up of it, Williamson also launched a book called Deathstroke Inc., that would have some foundations before Williamson decided to cross over Robin, Deathstroke Inc., and Batman all together before the pages of his own event, Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. Ed Brisson would take over the book and write a Deathstroke Year One with art by Dexter Soy, but that is what we do have for the 3 Deathstroke omnibuses featured here.
Just a note on Blue Beetle that we've been going over in the chat. That modern Blue Beetle omnibus, the year range on the poll is wrong. It's too late for us to change poll options. It says it starts in 2016. It would actually start in New 52 in 2011. So the map is correct on Crushing Crisis, as somebody actually caught on my site. I had forgotten, but Richard Bradley pointed it out in the chat. But the year range on the poll says 2016. So if you're looking for New 52 Blue Beetle, you do want to vote for that modern Blue Beetle book.
And moving on to, oh yeah, baby, Dr. Fate, Golden Age of Earth 2.
Now, we got the second bullet of this pretty much as a compendium, but that does not satisfy my yearning for Dr. Fate.
Just a fat trade.
Just a fat-ass trade.
I didn't say fat ass. I said fat trade, but go on, Peter.
So look, he's got a whole mess of Earth 2 stories that actually continue all the way through the Bronze Age. There are Dr. Fate team-ups with the main Earth Batman, but the alternate Earth Dr. Fate, all that could be in that Golden Age omnibus, which would primarily, of course, collect all of his appearances from the 40s. Then we have basically the contents of that fat trade. Then there's Dr. Fate, Jared Stevens, and the Helmet of Fate. So that consists of all of the Fate stuff starting in 1994. It could stretch as far as 2007 to collect the stuff that spins out of and runs adjacent to Infinite Crisis. And then there's Dr. Fate in the New 52.
And that will catch us up to speed with Dr. Fate. I love that Helmet of Fate series. Doom Patrol, which we don't really need a lot of, but what do we got left here?
We got barely anything, because we got another Doom Patrol this year. Was the Keith Giffen one was announced?
Yeah, Keith Giffen and Matt Clark, which is just right before the New 52 hit and reset everything.
That's crazy, man. It's like, how is Doom Patrol such an obscure? Although there isn't like as many as things like Legion of Superheroes, right? Like Doom Patrol isn't as expansive as Legion of Superheroes, but it's just crazy that we're going to get it all.
It's also, I think, a lot easier to nail down the different eras, because a lot of these runs are long enough where you can say, hey, like, we can collect all of Rachel Pollack's run, or we can collect all of Gerard Way runs, or God forbid, the John Byrne run. But we do have we do have a lot of Doom Patrol fans out there. Obviously, we have seen a lot of support from DC, maybe even particularly with the live action TV show even. A lot of them saying, hey, like, we can easily collect all of these, because I think Doom Patrol is one of the more easily collectible franchises for DC Comics.
Love that there's only 2. Flash. Here we go. Golden
All
Age.
right.
Yeah,
we got a lot. We got a lot. No, go ahead. Talk. I just want to say there's a lot.
Okay. We do need a lot of this. The Golden Age stuff with Jay Garrick. Never been collected in Omni format. Volume 1, the Bronze Age stuff. I mean, this is, the stuff with this is the Barry Allen stuff, and then the trial. Oh, I like the fact that you put the Trial Flash in here, breaking it down to that's the volume right before the beginning of Crisis. So that's awesome. And then you have
that's very similar to the Detroit era of Justice League, where we really didn't want to break up these 80s books so much. But for Flash, it's such a specific period and storyline that basically just starts in 1983 as a very clean breakpoint, ends directly at Crisis, has a very recognizable story in it. So that's why we did that rather than extend his Bronze Age line into the 80s, which is what we did for other characters.
And then the post-Crisis stuff. You have the William Messer-Loebs Volume 2. Oh, I love that you threw Impulse in here by Wade and Messer-Loebs. Flash by Mark Waid Volume 3. Includes the Flash Lantern. Could potentially recollect Miller and Morrison. We do like No Issues Left Behind, but that deluxe edition makes me think that they probably haven't. And the Fastest Man Alive, a.k.a. the Jeff Johns Companion. This is the stuff that happens right after Jeff Johns, right? And the stuff during this time. And also,
it's like the Infinite Crisis and post Flash.
Yeah, it's got those issues. Who was it? Was it Catherine?
Mark Guggenheim, baby.
Everybody's favorite comic author.
Yeah. Hey, you leave Guggenheim alone. He had 60 plus issues of an Omni collected just for X-Men.
Just because
He's writing a fantastic Star Wars series right now. Credit always where it is due.
And then the post-Flashpoint New 52 Rebirth. So we need Flash by Robert Venditti,
which follows Manapool and Buccellado. The Rebirth, Rebirth of Wally West. I find that interesting. Obviously, this would collect DC Rebirth #1, Flash Forward, and all of those specific individual key books where he is learning again. But Williamson 3 out of 3, which is, we have 2 omnibuses of it out already, which I think is super cool. Well, one already out, 1 to come, and hopefully a 3rd one to come soon after that. And Jeremy Adams, I got a chance to talk to him. He said he really wants an omnibus of his Flash run, so let's make it happen, guys.
Well, and I think what's not really evident from this, because it seems like so many books, but Flash is particularly well collected already. We have all of the Silver Age collected. That's why this one starts with the Bronze Age for Barry. And then we have the first volume of right after Crisis, and we have 2 volumes of Wade, and we have Manipul Ballot, and we have 2 Williamson. Like DC loves starting Flash omnibus lines, but a lot of these are either finishing or giving a second half or moving on from. And there's still plenty to do.
I just love how they're doing different eras and we never know what we're going to get. Like they started the Mark Waid stuff. They started the Joshua Williamson stuff. Then we have the William Mester Loeb stuff. And it's like, wait, they didn't wrap any of that era. They were just jumping around, kind of leaving you in suspense.
Hey, I mean, we got the Green Lantern Robert Venditti omnibuses to come out, right? Or will come out at some point. And I think a perfect follow-up could be, hey, let's print out that new 52 stuff before we finish out the rest. But yeah, they have done Flash really well at DC. I have been really, really impressed with their catalog so far. And obviously, getting the 2 Wade volumes out, one of my favorite runs ever. I mean, that's really impressive of them to do.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting that they started with Jeff Johns. That was the big era that they started, and not only started, but remapped it and rebranded the Omnis when they reprinted them. Instead of those 3, we got new 3s, and then we got Flashpoint. Green Arrow. Green Arrow needs a lot of love too, especially those older volumes. The Green Arrow and the 7 Soldiers of Victory Golden Age Omni Volume 2, Silver Age, and you have the Green Arrow and Black Canary Bronze Age Omni here. Follows the Arrow and Lantern omnibus.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Mapping all of Green Arrow is fascinating because he never had his own series through all of that whole era. So you kind of have to follow him from series to series. And after the Hard Travel and Heroes era that we all know in Green Lantern, he's a backup in so many different books. He's in Detective Comics. I think maybe he's in Adventure Comics at some point. I have it all mapped. And a lot of them are co-headlining with Black Canary. And then she gets a couple of her own solo stories. But they kind of just are back and forth in that whole period all the way up to Crisis pretty much. And in that, I think there's only 1 4-issue Green Arrow limited series that's actually him in the title of something in that whole period. So it's really tricky to collect. I'm sure we'll get it in Finest at some point, but is the perfect size to cram into an omnibus. With Green Arrow, you got to think about pretty much all we've got is Golden Age Omnibus Volume 1 and then the 2 Grell omnibuses, which are spectacular and spectacularly huge especially for DC. But that means there's more to do, right? So we've got to do the Connor Hawk period that comes after the Grell books. And then actually we have Archer's Quest, which was a this year omnibus, which I don't know about you, Dom, but I was shocked that book pushed as far as it did. I assumed that they would cut it off much earlier and not get into any Winnick material at all.
But we've seen that Meltzer material before, obviously, in the Absolute, but never did I expect, hey, we're going to dive into the run as much as they did. So again, a huge kudos to DC for that. And yes, we do need a follow-up to that. And like we mentioned earlier, we also have the Green Arrow and Black Canary omnibus also previously in the poll, because it is, of course, a Black Canary book as well. And post Flashpoint, I know a lot of people have a lot of differing opinions on Ollie after the events of Flashpoint, but we do have the new 52 omnibus that would have the Dan Jurgens run, along with the particularly well celebrated Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino run as well in there. And following after that, we do have the Benjamin Percy Rebirth Omnibus, which I would assume collects some of the 2015 books. Of course, the 2006 era and onwards, and stopping right at Heroes in Crisis, because that is where the run ends. And the Superman by Bendis companion. And I find this interesting because this was a particularly interesting point in time where Green Arrow did not have his own book, but he was appearing in a lot of Bendis's books because he fit the tone of what Bendis was doing with his Leviathan saga and his Action Comics saga as well. So you will have Leviathan, the event Leviathan thrown in there, the Checkmate series that he's in with Alex Maleev. So if people want that era of Bendis in omnibus format, but not the Superman parts particularly, but with this Green Arrow material, this is what you will want to vote on.
Yeah, it's kind of like Bendis seemed like he wanted to adopt him maybe a little bit more in the long term and just never really got to tell the full story, but he's the main character in like half of them.
Yeah. The Green Arrow stuff I'm most excited for is that Connor Hawke stuff. Like, that stuff has never been printed in any kind of trade paperback. No. The Judd Winnick would be amazing, but at least with Judd Winnick, every single one of his Green Arrow stories have been printed in trade paperback. Like his Green Lantern is so hit and miss because a lot of it hasn't been seen in trade paperback. But by this point, we were getting a lot of trades of Judd Winnick and weird trade paperbacks, but at least all of it, we've seen it in a collected edition. But I would be all over that. I love that run of Green Arrow, especially what he brought to the Green Arrow like family. It kind of reminded me a little bit of what Joshua Williamson was doing, or I guess vice versa. And speaking of,
I really am excited to see that Joshua Williamson stuff collected from right before Absolute Power, but just because he was off the run around issue 16 or 17, and then Chris Condon and Montos took over, it's hard to know if they would do like a Williamson and Condon omnibus because we don't know how long that's going to go, or actually it's kind of all like prelude to Absolute Power. Would they market it that way? So generally we stayed away from books that are from Dawn of DC and forward, unless there was like a really obvious completed run like Zdarsky Bat.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Condon also told me that he's on Green Arrow very, very long term. So
nice. His run has been crushing. That Montos art with the Adriano Lucas colors.
It is spectacular.
It's amazing.
Green Lantern. Alan Scott, the Green Lantern of the Golden Age. Not the same kind of power with the guy with the ring, but that's okay. None of that stuff has been collected in Omni format, plus the JSA. The new Golden Age by Johns. This is the stuff from 20.
Yeah, this is the brand new, or not the brand new, but when they did pull out the new Golden Age one shot, and John said, "I want to write the JSA before I head off and do my own thing." We have, so in this omnibus, you will have the JSA 12-issue series along with Stargirl, the Lost Children, issues 1 through 6, and the spin-off series from JSA, Wesley Dodds by Robert Venditti, Jake Garrick with Jeremy Adams, and Alan Scott with Tim Sheridan. So we'll have that one giant Omni as a part of that.
And that Alan Scott series is Eisner nominated in it. May have been one of my top 10 series of last year. It was a spectacular, spectacular comic book. But then we move on to Hal Jordan. So Hal Jordan is another one of these characters who is very well collected, right? So we've got his Silver Age stuff covered. We've got that Hard Traveling Heroes era with Green Arrow covered. So that's where we've got to pick up after that, which is pretty late in the Bronze Age where we would pick up. Now, a lot of people have said, why don't you have a Green Lantern Corps by Engelhart book in here? But it's so hard to decide exactly where that would start because Engelhart writes it before it's officially Green Lantern Corps, and then it goes on to be Green Lantern Corps. This is one of those ones that if you want to get there, we want to centralize your votes on a book that DC would probably print first, which is kicking off that run. And so that's why we've got that here. Then, of course, after Crisis, we kind of reboot his continuity, although the Green Lantern Corps stuff continues a little bit after Crisis. But then we get Emerald Dawn that then spins into Emerald Dawn 2 and then spins into his own ongoing 1990 series, in which he appears all the way up to issue 50 or 55 before Kyle Rayner takes over. We'll get to Kyle Rayner in a second. But then if you want to keep following Hal Jordan, you probably want a Spectre omnibus, which would be the Spectre by DeMatteis, which has Hal Jordan as the Spectre, and Omar mapped this one last year. This per Omar should include Final Night and Day of Judgment.
You need Final Night. You need Final Night in there. No Final Night, no Omni. Just saying. Anyway.
Then we've got all of the Jeff Johns material. We've got all of the Robert Venditti material up until Rebirth. So that's where we would pick up with what effectively would be Venditti Volume 3. Those Venditti books, Dom, came out so fast that I didn't even know they were out. It happened so quick.
I know. In the span of like 2.5 months of the omnibuses being in release date as well, which is absolutely crazy to me. Like, when have we ever had one of those closely together? But yes, Volume 3 would have all of the Rebirth, or most of the Rebirth material, as we can see here. It is everything with Hal Jordan in charge of the Green Lantern Corps, not to be confused with the Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz series by Sam Humphries and Tim Seeley, but we will talk about that later. We also do have the Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp run of Green Lantern Hal Jordan. This was the first Green Lantern book that I bought, and not somebody else, but I bought in single issues at my comic shop. Featuring this is Grant Morrison's very unique version of the character. It will be for those who are voting for this, you have the 2 12-issue series, so season 1 and season 2, along with the Black Stars miniseries also collected in here. And now that we have had Jeremy Adams on for Green Lantern, which we talked about earlier, we've got a lot of issues now. Green Lantern Corps just started up this year. This is going to be the dawn of DC era for Hal Jordan, back as the main Green Lantern, if you will, by Jeremy Adams, Zermanico. And you will also, if I can get this correctly, Crisis, we also are including the Philip Kennedy Johnson and Montos John Stewart War Journal series in here as well.
I would like to point out that I have spent the last month and a half mapping all these, and Dom is just doing this off the top of his head. So 2 things I want to say there. I am a noted Grant Morrison equivocator. I don't always love their stuff. I love Green Lantern by Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp. I just think it gets to the heart of Green Lantern in such an interesting way. That Dawn of DC Omnibus, the reason that's there is there's a very defined year 1. It's actually 18 months. It's not just year 1, but it has a very specific story. John Stewart goes off and has its own adventures and then comes back and all dovetails into one big finale. And then it's like, boom, sliced off. Let's get started with year 2. And that's where Green Lantern Corps begins. So it's a great read. Every issue of art is spectacular. And it's one of the few Dawn of DC books where it's like, yeah, there's a very clear beginning and ending here.
People in the comments that have been asking about commenting on the creator of the Green Lantern Emerald Dawn stuff. I don't know. There's stuff that he wrote that DC has printed. As a matter of fact, one of the most recent books, I think it was Doom Patrol, did have his name attached to a issue, and it's still there. His name is there. So we're just putting it here. You can vote for whatever you want to. And taking us to the second page. Oh, hell yes. Guy Gardner Warrior, baby. It might be getting 30 votes. I don't care. It's good stuff. And then John Stewart.
Sorry for my inability to spell John Stewart's name correctly. That's me being a Daily Show
it's
fan.
okay. We love the Daily Show. I love the Daily Show.
John Stewart. And then hell yeah, when he joined the Dark Stars, baby. He's got those early Travis Charest covers back when he was channeling Jim Lee.
That series is so interesting. Like they launched it as we're going to do a whole other Green Lantern Corps, and they also had Legion at that point, not Legion of Superheroes, but Legion Legion. And then they were like, yeah, we're going to have a whole Green Lantern line in 1992. So they launched Mosaic, and they launched Guy Gardner Warrior, and they launched Dark Stars. Then after John Stewart Mosaic gets canceled, which has enough issues to be its own book, especially with Green Lanterns Quarterly, John Stewart joins Dark Stars at 0 Hour and then serves out the last year of Dark Stars as the main character of that run. Like, this is stuff I all missed because I wasn't really collecting Green Lantern in the 90s, but it's like really interesting. There was a whole line of there were like 6 Green Lantern books.
Yeah, there were a lot, and plus we get a lot of good Nort there. And Mosaic, baby. And Legion was excellent. The Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, this is the Trinity. You put it here by Kurt Busiek.
Well, because John Stewart is in a lot of the backup stories. And so if that omnibus collected all the issues in full, it would actually have a ton of John Stewart material.
And then you have the Green Lantern Dawn on DC Omni here, Volume 1, which also, you had it in the previous slide. Is that right?
Yeah. Like I mentioned, John Stewart has his own 12-issue series that I would consider to be a part of that Green Lantern era, if you will.
Gotcha. Green Lantern Kyle Rayner, Volume 1. Oh my gosh, yes. You know, I actually mapped these out, and I think I had it down to 5 Omnis, if I'm not mistaken, many years ago. But I'm curious what you added there, eventually including the Winnick stuff. But this is the beginning with the Ron Mars stuff. This is starting with including, I assume, Emerald, Twilight, 48, 49, and 50.
Yeah, I mean, we've got it in compendium and it's mapped pretty darn well, but we don't have it in omnibus.
Green Lantern Kyle Rayner and the New Guardians is during the New 52. It's an era that's also hasn't been collected. We got Red Lanterns, we got Green Lantern Corps, and we got Green Lantern collected during this era, but not New Guardians.
Yeah, we don't have Kyle Rayner and Carol Ferris, leading the charge. That specific Justin Jordan book ever collected in omnibus format, so that's why it's here.
And then the DC Universe by Tom King, which I assume is because of the Omega Man that you put in here.
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay. Green Lantern Corps, which had a couple of series.
Yeah. So this is going to collect the Dave Gibbons issues that were not a part of the Tomasi.
I mapped that. I called it No Lantern Left Behind.
Those Left Behind.
Wow.
Yeah, and then nobody voted for it because they didn't know what it was.
Shut up.
It's gonna have the Tony Bedard issues right before War of the Green Lantern, War of the Green Lanterns, and that part of the crossover. Gonna have all those issues that just before that crossover event. And this will have we got the Ion series, which is gonna be part of the compendium, not a part of the omnibuses. So everybody who has been looking for these specific issues that aren't written by Johns, written by Peter J. Tomasi, or drawn by Patrick Gleason, Ivan Reyes, Doug Mankey, whoever it might be, those are going to be all in this specific omnibus. Green Lanterns, The Rebirth, Omnibus Volume 1. I got a chance to ask Sam Humphries a couple of weeks ago if DC was ever going to publish a Green Lanterns Omni, and he said he wants you, the people, to let DC know. So
how did they let him know? Did he give them some email address to email? Did they give him a physical address to go and take the torches and pitchforks to?
Oh, well, you could bring the pitchforks, but I'm bringing my ballot, Omar. That's how I'm going to tell
ballot? That's awesome. You're going to staple it to the front door? Okay.
Martin Luther style.
That's right. So
classic.
Sam really wants an omnibus of his Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz run, and I know a lot of people do. That was one of my favorites from Rebirth, just following Jess's story. If that is something that you were looking for, poll for this Omni. And then we have the Green Lanterns by N.K. Jemisin and Jeffrey Thorne. N.K. Jemisin, of course, the writer of Far Sector, along with Jamal Campbell, who absolutely crushes it on that book. And Jeffrey Thorne, who managed to, who was part of the, or wrote the Green Lantern run for the Infinite Frontier, like 2021 to 2023 part of DC. Jeffrey Thorne was the main writer for Hal Jordan, if you will, before Jeremy Adams gets on. So if that is something that you are looking for with those specific books, those are what you want to put on your list.
Now, would it really include Far Sector? We don't know. That's kind of a little unorthodox for DC, especially because there's a deluxe edition. But again, a lot of times when there is an existing deluxe edition, we know that people are clever about this. You all know the material so well. And so as a signpost, we kind of like to put in, just like we did earlier with the Morrison and Miller material on Flash, that like if it suits your fancy, you can think of yourself voting for that to include Far Sector. Now, there's also a lot of allies of the Green Lanterns over the year that kind of don't fit into their own sides. The original Omega Men from the 80s, Legion and Rebels, which went on and on and on. That would need at least 2, if not 3 omnibuses. Then Rebels comes back before Flashpoint, written by Tony Bedard. That's enough for a whole omnibus. Then there's enough stuff in New 52 that's not collected in all the existing omnibuses to make a whole extra omnibus. So last year, this was separated between Larfleeze and Threshold. They both did pretty well on their own. So we've combined it this year because we took a look at the map and it actually fits all well together. There's also other material like Lost Army and Edge of Oblivion, which were not in those Venditti books, so we probably need to gather them together here. And then, of course, Sinestro had his own ongoing series as well, all written by Cullen Bunn.
Underrated series, if I may add.
Yeah, Sinestro was solid, man. That was really good. I hope that gets made one day. Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. The Early Years by Dini, Kessel, and Dotson. That was before the New 52, so she was still wearing her classic animated series outfit.
And this is, they would have the same mapping as the DC Finest has. And I actually found the DC Finest mapping of Harley Quinn to be quite well done because they take out all of the, for No Man's Land at least, they take out all of the non-Harley portions and just give you the details and bits of the Harley story in there. For the Rebirth, wait, go. Sorry.
They have oversized hardcovers of these collected too, right? The classic stuff.
Yeah, the Carl Kessel and Dodson run. Yeah, they have deluxes. The Rebirth Omnibus. So this would follow the Palmiotti and because Palmiotti and Clark took Harley Quinn from New 52 into Rebirth with their own run, but they do leave midway. We do have Frank Thierry and Sam Humphries who then take up Harley Quinn right before they relaunched it for Infinite Frontier, which is where Stephanie Phillips takes over the book. There's even a cool weekly. It was published weekly, at least I remember. Gosh, I cannot speak, but there was a weekly event, if you want to call it that, weekly story in Stephanie Phillips's run, and then Teenie Howard took over. We currently have, so that is what we do have for Harley Quinn, and then of course Poison Ivy. People have been asking a lot for it. Peter alluded early in this omnibus polling that for the Batman books, we were going to have Poison Ivy in a completely separate category because of the G. Willow Wilson run. So not only will we be able to vote for any Poison Ivy omnibus that collects her stories from her inception on, G. Willow Wilson's run, which has been absolutely fantastic, it's got enough issues now where we can say put it in an omnibus.
The Harley Quinn Rebirth is really interesting. If you look at volume 3, they still have Frank Thierry's issues included in there. They're not physically in there, but if you look at what's collected under, like, you know, where they have like where it was originally printed and stuff, that actually has those Frank Thierry issues as it was solicited. So at one time they were going to include them in there, but I guess at the last minute they decided to take them out. But
I actually really like that period. I think it was less gag of the issue and more like an ongoing story for Harley, which because she's such a humor character, it doesn't always happen. I'm a big fan of that. And the art was great. A lot of Sammy Basri art, which I think is the perfect artist for her. Yeah.
And now he's on Birds of Prey.
Mad Love would be in the early years, volume 1.
Yeah.
And moving on to Hawkman.
Mace Man.
Now I have gotten obsessed with Hawkman through this process, and so little of this is collected. So we've got nothing old of Hawkman. So he's got a Golden Age omnibus. There's Hawkman in the Silver Age, which could include backups. Then Hawkman is written in the immediate pre-crisis period by Jenny Blake Isabella, who is asked that still be credited as Tony Isabella in all of her prior work. So Hawkman by Tony Isabella there, which is a great run. But then Hawkworld happens, and I actually sat down and found that I had a couple of Hawkworld back issues. So I dug them out of the stacks. Hawkworld was friggin' cool, y'all. It's like Ostrander just developed the whole culture of Hawkworld, of Thanagar, and it actually starts with a 4-issue Tim Truman miniseries, which we missed on the poll last year, but it's included this year. It is a really good read. And then Ostrander basically brings all of the Hawkworld drama to Earth, and so writes him as a more traditional superhero in Hawkman by Ostrander, and then Messner Loebs takes over. There's a few other people that write at the end of that run for the last 6 issues, including Christopher Priest. Then there's not a lot of Hawkman until we get to the 2000s, and we do have a Jeff Johns Hawkman omnibus, but we don't have what comes after that. So Jimmy Palmiotti Gray and also Walt Simonson write that run. For a while, it's actually retitled to Hawkgirl, but all of it could fit into one book. And then in Rebirth, there was the Savage Hawkman, which was a Rebirth launch series, didn't last all that long. Then some of you might be asking where the Death of Hawkman could be. It could be in either of these two series, because it's kind of like it's the name of the series because it doesn't really fit in with Robert Venditti series, which starts with a big bang and is one of my personal favorites. It was one of my picks for what should be evergreen from DC, and y'all don't even know because you haven't read it. So maybe if we had an omnibus, more people would read it.
There you go. Thank you so much for that, Crisis.
That Palmiotti and Gray stuff following Johns also is solid stuff. I don't think it gets enough deserved attention as it should.
I think at the time it was well received, and it had trade paperbacks as well as the Simonson run of Hawkgirl. But I think, much like a lot of stories of Hawkman, it kind of gets forgotten in time. The Robert Venditti stuff, that I think it's volume 2. I told him yesterday when I interviewed him, it is completely out of print, that trade paperback, because it came out during COVID. So they underprinted it. And now it's like, I'll just wait for an Omni. So I'm hoping that the sales of Green Lantern show DC that, hey, this guy's, or maybe people vote for it. It's a solid run on Hawkman. And you're right. That Hawkman, Hawkworld was so awesome when it came out, man. And it took them that long from 1986 to 1989 to kind of get their crap together and say, okay, we really need a new origin for Hawkman because everybody's doing their own thing with him.
As is per usual with the character.
Oh, yeah, baby. Give me that John Constantine or Constantine, depending on where you're from. Hellblazer. I love that you're going ahead. You're like, screw it. We know they're going to do it. By Paul Jenkins, Volume 4. Rumor is that they're working on that. Rumor by Paul Jenkins himself. But he's known to spread rumors. I love that you're separating this by different creators, yet still having a volume there. That's awesome. Because this
well,
is
it's to find your way. Like DC's not going to actually do that, but for people voting on the poll, like we all know, you know.
And then you have Volume 5, the Ellis and Azzarello stuff. The Mikey Carey. That's his name, Mikey Carey.
Did I write Mikey?
That's okay.
Yeah.
One mistake.
You know, many people other than me proved this.
I proved it. I did.
Yeah.
I just thought you and him like were really close, and that's your nickname.
Mikey with the nunchucks.
Diggle and Milligan, and then the Milligan stuff. Then you're jumping to the New 52 era. This is the Constantine New 52
where
era.
he becomes a permanent part of the DC universe instead of his own thing in Vertigo. You have a lot different character, but here you're going to find the works of Ming Doyle and James Tynion. So if that is something up your alley, why not? Rebirth, he also still continues to be a part of the whole entire regular DC Universe line. This is when Vertigo was starting to sort of wind down a bit as Didio was looking to turn Vertigo into something else completely. But this is the Simon Oliver run, if I recall correctly, for Rebirth, at least until Simon Spurrier comes on with Aaron Campbell and brings John back to his Vertigo roots, if you may, even if it wasn't a Vertigo book in and of itself. So that is the final omnibus that we have here on the poll.
Teen is certainly closer to the original Latin pronunciation. Latin, you say? Let me take a crack at this then. It would be John Constantine. That's it. You all have been saying it wrong the entire time. Constantine.
This is the guy who...
That's what I will be calling him. Juan Constantine. Renaming everything, damn it. Somebody was asking, this is such a good question because there's a lot of good ones. But I'm curious, who do we think is the best Constantine writer? I gotta go with Ennis. I don't think anything surpassed Ennis. I thought his run was freaking perfect. Didn't mean to cover you up, Tigereyes. Who's your favorite, Tigereyes?
Mike Carey.
Carey's a good answer. It's a good answer. Dom, what about you, buddy? You like the new stuff?
I love Spurrier's take on John. Like, I think it's absolutely wonderful. And it actually got me into reading all of some of his 80s stuff. So that was the gateway for it. And I think even if I find I've liked, say, some of those 80s comics, I still really, really like the Spurrier Black Label stuff, man. It's hard to miss.
Okay. Peter, how much of this have you read?
Very little. I've actually only read the Spurrier stuff, which I love the first Spurrier series. I don't like the America series quite as much. But actually, I don't get FOMO on a lot of stuff because I buy so much, but I definitely should have bought all 26 volumes of those Hellblazer trades. Yeah.
They were good. I was hoping that one day they would give us an Omni, and looks like they're getting us there. Justice League. Oh yeah, baby. Look at this. This is crazy. Justice League International Volume 4. I have thoughts about that. Justice League of America, the Bronze Age Omni Volume 4. That would be it, right? That would wrap it up and put it right next to the Detroit era.
Yeah, they might need 2 omnibuses. They might need 1. Depends on how bold they get.
Give me a fatty, baby. Give me a fatty.
It could be a fatty. That's the end. That's it.
Justice League International Volume 4. I think I called it Superman in the Justice League when I renamed it, because International by that point kind of is over after J.M. DeMatteis and Keith Giffen, but it's that stuff that follows up that run of Volume 3.
Yeah, there's more issues of Europe and more issues of International still to collect. The big question is, those first 3 International books, and Dom knows this for sure, they're mapped beautifully. Like, it really is all inclusive. And the question is like, well, since DC's got a good thing going, especially if they're going to really be paying attention to the poll this year and getting the results directly from Omar, if International 4 does really well, like, would DC just keep it up? We basically want them to do that. Just keep collecting. Just
so awesome.
Yeah.
That would be so awesome. Task Force, which was the short-lived series that was pretty much Suicide Squad meets Justice League.
David Michelinie's Suicide Squad. That's what I like.
It's a lot of fun though. I think the only issues that have ever been collected, in Omni format, are the Nightfall tie-in or Night Quest tie-in issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a trade paperback with Task Force, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know.
Very much defunct at this point.
I think Extreme Justice did come out in trade. Like there were 2 trades of Extreme Justice.
Yeah.
But could also include living assault weapons. Hell yes. Who's the guilty party?
It might have been you. It might have actually been past Omar.
Pat myself on the back. I don't do that quite often.
No, never. The reason we have Task Force and Extreme Justice on there is they're far enough after that International Volume 4 that it's just not clear to us if GC would keep just putting everything. And I have to say, both Task Force and Extreme Justice exist pretty far off to the side of the main Justice League line, especially Extreme Justice. So there wouldn't be as much reason to collect that in the ongoing line, but who knows? We'll see how they collect Volume 4 whenever it gets announced. And depending on that, some of these options could change.
And moving on to part 2, Morrison to Infinite Crisis.
All right, everybody take a deep breath because this is complicated.
Let's get nuts.
It's complicated.
Let's get nuts.
So look, some people hate the Morrison Omnibus because it skips issues not by Morrison. And that's what that first bullet is. If you just want them to say, throw that in the garbage, start this line over again, then you'd be voting for that first bullet. That's pretty clear. And honestly, that could even be 2 omnibuses just to get to the end of Morrison, because if we're pulling in all of like the side stuff like Aztec and all those other things, it's actually quite long, mapped extensively in Crushing Crisis. Then there's that second bullet there. There's 2 different groups of people that might want to vote for that. You might want to vote for that to say, well, look, this book can basically act as a companion to the existing Morrison book, which I've got on my shelf, and just fill in all the gaps, right? So in which case, vote for that bullet. Or you could be like, no. This should just pick up exactly after Morrison's run mainly ends and just collect forward with the Mark Waid stuff. That you could vote for it too. In that case, it serves both of those purposes. And then from there on, it gets a little bit clearer because we're out of that phase where, the book is so tangled up with the weird mapping of that Morrison book. Then comes Joe Kelly and Dennis O'Neil. Then comes The Road to Infinite Crisis, which has a variety of authors, Claremont, Austin, Busiek, and Johns. And it could even pull in Justice League Elite.
And part 3 is Infinite Crisis to Flashpoint. So you've got Classified in here. Oh, man. Yes. The Meltzer and McDuffie stuff is so good. It's got great artwork, too, by Ed Bennis.
And Joe Benitez for Omar
Joe
fans.
Benitez doing some stuff. Ian Churchill, I think, doing a couple of issues. Yeah. It's got some great art in there. And then Justice League Generation Lost. This could be part of their Justice League International, but it's still really good, like classic stuff. I love that you included the Power Girl issues and Cry for Justice by James Robinson, even though it gets a lot of hate. That's okay.
I think that Power Girl suggestion came from somebody on the Reddit. Actually, I was like, I had no idea. Yeah. It's a good poll.
Justice League United, International, in America. This is the new. Okay. This is
it's the Jeff Lemire, Mike McCone Justice League run.
Rebirth.
Continuing on, you obviously have the Rebirth Omnibus. We've had a good amount of Rebirth Omnibuses now out in the last couple of years. Because when we only started with obviously the Superman by Tomasi and Gleason. Now we have a good handful of those Rebirth runs that are either now coming out in Omnibus or previously coming out. Justice League is one of the ones that haven't been touched. But you do have the Brian Hitch run, which was roughly 3 trade paperbacks until Christopher Priest takes over. And this is right before we have the New Justice line. By New Justice, I do mean, yes, the Scott Snyder Justice League Odyssey, all of those books that came in 2018. And then you have the Rebirth Omnibus by Steve Orlando, which was launched in, this was, from what I remember, a secret project when they announced it in 2016, and they found out, oh, there's a brand new and different Justice League of America featuring Steve Orlando's early work. And just like I mentioned with Justice League Odyssey, we are allowing folks to vote for Justice League Odyssey by Joshua Williamson, and also with art by Stepan Sajic before Dan Abnett takes over. This is essentially the sneak Titans book, because they canceled Titans right in the midst of the Drowned Earth crossover special with Justice League Gets Reborn, and this is essentially a Titans book by those people. And if you could take off the comment, Omar, so I can see the last volume.
Oh, sure.
And then, yes, we have the, and then everything else right after Snyder leaves to go do the Dark Knight's death metal events. We do have Robert Venditti, Simon Spurrier, Joshua Williamson, and Brian Michael Bendis, who all each take turns on the Justice League book before the inevitable, quote unquote, death of the Justice League right before the pages of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths.
This is an excellent question, because I really liked that guy's art. Whatever happened to the artist on Cry for Justice, because that was gorgeous. I agree. It was Mauro Casoli, I think is how you pronounce his name at first, and then it was Scott Clark for the last couple of issues. Now, Scott Clark passed away, unfortunately, a few years back. Died way too young. Yeah. A lot of us remember him from his wonderful artwork on Stormwatch.
Stormwatch, baby.
Yeah, gone way too soon. But I don't know what happened to... Honestly, I have no idea what happened to Morrow. He only did that, and I think like Trials of Shazam. Or something.
He did. Yeah, he did a Shazam book with Winnick, and I think that was that.
Yeah, that's, I don't know. Maybe he was too slow. Maybe he's doing something else now. Outside of comics, I mean, Justice Society of America.
Yes! I love these fools.
So you have the All-Star Comics, the Golden Age Omni, 1940. This is the stuff from, yes,
All-Star Comics. So everything that was in those DC Finest would have roughly the same mapping, just in that omnibus format.
The retro series by Roy Thomas, much like his Invader
everybody
series.
Likes to say, like, oh, we're never going to get it. I see people already saying that in the chat. It did so well in the poll last year. You know DC is going to read the results. If that ranks as high this year, like, eyes at DC will see that. And I think with the movement of things like the Grell Green Arrow, like Warlord by Grell, I think they're starting to recognize that there are golden them thar 70s and 80s hills, and that All-Star Squadron might really work for people. It would have to be 2 omnibuses, because I think it goes 60 issues. And then of course there's also Infinity Inc., which is like the kids of the people from the All-Star Squadron. So really we're talking about
some of those characters show up in Sandman, so it becomes really important.
And if you are reading the current Jeff Lemire run of Justice Society of America, you will see Infinity Inc. and All-Star Squadron sprinkles in the run. So it's clear that DC has had, I think, eyes on this for a while. We also have an upcoming DC Finest book, the Spectre book that's coming out soon, that is going to collect certain issues of All-Star Squadron. So never say never when it comes to never being collected.
It's also All-Star Squadron and Firestorm are David Gabriel's most wanted DC Omnis.
I want Firestorm so bad.
Me too.
I know, he's been so poorly collected up until, I mean, we have 1-2 trades. JSA Crisis on Multiple Earths.
So a lot of people just want to see all of those Multiple Earths books. Kind of, they've been in deluxe edition and hardcover. Some people just want to see them all ganged up, because that's really what the JSA story is in the present day, up until they start getting their own material again in 1976, and then that would be in there as well. Then from 1976 to 1993, they kind of have a revival that of course Crisis on Infinite Earths really changes. If you don't know this material well, these titles and dates are going to make no sense to you, and it's hard to explain them. If you know the material well, they're going to make very good sense, I hope. And then after their Crisis, we have a whole lot of other JSA stuff. So there's the Young All-Stars, which is kind of like a retread of what the JSA could be in a post-crisis world. And then this came from one of our mappers that was contributing to the public consultation. There could be a JSA companion that has so much material. Throughout the 90s, a lot of individual JSA members got their own material, like Wildcat, and that could be in that book. But then there's also a lot of side material that happens right around the launch of that JSA series that was initially written by James Robinson that wasn't collected in that omnibus. So we really could get one fat prelude companion that covers all of the 90s all the way to 2005 of all of the supporting stuff for JSA JSA members. Then, of course, there's all of JSA Classified, which could fit all into one big fat book. JSA Omnibus Volume 4, which has always kind of bugged me that they've never finished that line, which could include all of JSA All-Stars. Then the JSA The New Golden Age, which we've already talked about back on the Green Lantern side by Jeff Johns, but then all those supporting miniseries as well, Stargirl, Dodds, Garrick, and Scott. And then we have the New 52, Earth 2, which was effectively the Justice Society, although that's really its own pocket of continuity.
Yes. To expand on a couple of what Peter was saying, I agree with that Omnibus Volume 4 never being, because like James Robinson wrote a decent amount of those issues. I'm like, he's one of your JSA guys. Are you not going to ever collect that in that format? So we have these JSA Omnis 1, 2, and 3. I understand that, you know, Jeff Johns, whatever, but I'm like, come on. It's James Robinson. He's another one of the big JSA guys, but that's not
Jerry Ordway's issues were collected in that Volume 3, which I always thought was really strange.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, because that story ends like that issue right after Thy Kingdom Come finishes. I'm like, that's the end of the Johns run for me.
Yeah. It's interesting too. Much like that James Robinson Justice League, it never got finished in trade paperback. Those last two trades of JSA All Stars and JSA and Justice League by Morrison or by James Robinson, taken, canceled, gone, never came out. If I can't even own it. He collected editions.
You can't. But if I may, I want to talk about the New 52 Earth 2 continuity pocket that Crisis was talking about just a little bit before we move on. James Robinson was given the opportunity by DC to effectively, because you know the JSA cannot fit into this weird continuity where we are scrapping everything from the start. With a couple of exceptions, we're going to have them on a completely brand new different Earth, and this is going to be our quote-unquote JSA book. For the while, Tom Taylor later takes over the run with Nicholas Scott, featuring some of Tom's earlier DC work, if you may. Not the Nightwing guy, but he did take over right before the book ended in 2015. World's End is, from what I remember, it was a monthly series, an event that followed that, and a book called what was it? World's End had its own series. So you had Earth 2 and World's End all pocketed in there, which leads up right into Convergence. So this is effectively, I would argue, your road to Convergence book, if you may. And Society is a completely brand new series that ran from 2015 to 17, which is the end of that Earth 2 pocket universe. So if that is something that you are looking into to see how DC effectively managed the not JSA until the JSA came back, in the pages of the Doomsday Clock and later Scott Snyder's Justice League, this is the series for you.
And let me quickly get this super chat. Sorry I'm late. Can you start over? Crisis, would you like to answer from
my high speed? I mean, we could.
No, we're not going to start over. Rewind.
Legion of Superheroes. Well, I'm going to very carefully talk about this because Lars has given me very specific instructions.
Let me do it. I'll do it really quick. Next. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
So look, we had some problems with these books last year because it had everything included, but it was like if you told somebody to map all of X-Men for you and all they had was the publishing history and they didn't like know anything about what everybody's favorite ones are, the big stories, and they were just looking at the issue numbers. That was kind of what the books looked like last year. So Lars came in and did a completely big reorg, and then Jess Omnidog proofed it. So these are really clean and inclusive now, and that's why the titles are so long. So in the Bronze Age, we would pick up from the existing Legion of Superheroes book for Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, the Bronze Age Omnibus Volume 1. There's actually a lot of material here to get through, over 100 issues. So this would be several Bronze Age volumes that we kick off from here. It would follow the Silver Age volume directly. It would eventually include Karate Kid, which I learned is a real thing. Then, after all those Bronze Ages were done, we'd end the Bronze Age period with Legion of Superheroes starting in 1980 by Jerry Conway. So this would be AKA the 80s, and it would pick up from issue 259. I'm assured that most people do not want to see the Conway material intermingled with the Levitz material, even though we probably could push a little bit into Levitz. So now we start with Levitz, Legion of Superheroes, Volume 1 by Levitz, which is the Great Darkness Saga, which would include, starting from issue 284, which could include those Tales of the Legion of Superheroes issues that ran alongside the launch of the next series, but actually were still numbered with this series numbering. The reason we kept pushing on for this one, though, is because DC has released that somewhat somewhat comprehensively in deluxe edition already. So they might not want to start from that volume 1 material. They might want to just jump in to volume 2 and just not call it volume 2, because that starts the Legion series that launched in 1984. It could be also called Eye for an Eye. It would include the Legionnaires 3 miniseries. And then finally, we also have the end of that run, which fits directly before 5 years later. And because it comes right before 5 years later and kind of features the end of that period, again, DC could really release that independently if they wanted to, which would be the 3rd volume of the Levitt stuff.
And moving on to part 2.
Yeah.
5 years later to reboot. Oh, this is
So
the Wade stuff and the music stuff.
yeah, and so we have one solo book in there, Valor by Fleming, Wade, and Busiek, and that really could have been grouped in with the 5 years later omnibuses, but wasn't, so it would otherwise be stranded, which is why we've got it here. Then we get to the basically post-Zero Hour stuff, which to me, I always thought of post-Zero Hour. I'm informed that many Legion fans talk about it as if it's called The New Earth, and that would have to collect Legion of Superheroes and Legionnaires, which were 2 separate series. That would need a couple of volumes to get through all of that material, but there's a very specific cutting point right in the final few issues of both of those books where Abnett and Lanning take over before they launch into their own series. And so that starts in 1999, and that would be Legion of Superheroes 1989 by Abnett and Lanning, which then would continue into their own books that spin off from there. That's why it's volume 1 and 2. Then
Legion
we get all the way,
right?
yeah, the original Legion Lust, which I honestly probably should have put in the bracket there because people are going to be looking for that. Oh well. So now we get into 3 boot. So that's Legion of Superheroes 2005 by Mark Waid and Jim Shooter. And then also there's the Return of the Legion by Johns Robinson and Levitz from 2007, spinning out of Final Crisis to 2011. Then we go to post Flashpoint Legion of Superheroes. They had 2 different series in New 52, including Legion Lost and the Infinitus Saga. And then finally we get to Bendis rebooting them in 2020.
And
that
yes,
Legion by Mark Waid was the first Legion book that, to me, I was hooked on because it made sense. It was a fresh start, and it was so good, and it led into the Supergirl and the Legion of Superheroes. Then again, I guess by the time Levitz came back, and no, it was I thought it was a Jim Shooter with Francis Manapul.
Yep.
It was kind of a mess again, but Wade, oh man, it was so good. Was such a good series.
I do find it interesting that Mark Waid will now have been at DC for 3 separate Legion reboots, 2 of which he had a particular hand in.
He was guilty of
I asked him that question, and he was just like, yeah, it's crazy to think that you've been working for a company for over 40 years. So here we are.
Martian Manhunter, another character that really doesn't have a lot of stuff collected. You have the Silver Age Omni, the 1955 stuff, the John Ostrander stuff.
Yes,
excellent.
I love that Ostrander run.
And it also got, I think, 1 or 2 trades, and then it was discontinued, unfortunately.
Correct.
And then the 2007 Lieberman, Williams, and Orlando stuff. So again, a character that hasn't had a lot of collected editions, but you could totally collect a lot of the stuff in Omni format and be done with. Because I think the Silver Age stuff, you wouldn't need a lot, right? How many volumes did you end up mapping, Peter?
I think it might need 2.
Okay.
But it's not a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, because he didn't really do much until later on post-Crisis, all through the 80s. He was just part of the Justice League. And then finally in the late 90s is when he got his own series. So
guys, so I think the challenge with that one is he had 2 showcase volumes. So the material comes to about 1,100 pages. DC generally tries to shy away from doing that books that big in the Silver Age, but they have occasionally when they could just knock out a smaller property one and done, which I think is about how long I want to say the Doom Patrol omnibus is. I could be wrong. So there is a chance that they could do it all in one book.
And also, if you guys love Oreos and or Chocos, please vote for the Ostrander Martian Manhunter Omnibus. I want that. We need it. We need it today.
I'm sorry, Oreos?
I meant Chocos.
Chocos.
Okay.
I said Oreos or Choco, just in case if somebody in the audience is like, what's a Choco? Well, at least I talked about an equivalent of it.
I don't know right now.
I know. I am a big John. I would never.
Milestone Heroes. Here we go. Milestone, the complete omnis, mirroring the compendiums. I like the way you think, my friend. Milestone Static, the original omnibus, 1993 to 2001, and then the Milestone returns. This is the stuff that happened in 2021.
Yeah, with the return of Milestone and a lot of awesome books from Colin and everybody else who has
A lot of great
on
creators coming back to that series too. Because Milestone was the original brainchild of, let's see, Dwayne McDuffie. Who else was involved besides Dwayne? Was it Dennis Cohen? And I think the new stuff has Reggie Hudlin involved, doesn't it?
Reggie. Yeah, Reggie's part of the team.
It's crazy. We grew up watching his movies, House Party 1 and 2. And now he's writing Black Panther, or was writing Black Panther, the relaunch of Milestone. It's good stuff in there if you've never read it, especially that classic stuff.
And I can totally see them doing a static omnibus one day. I mean, we're getting a static DC Finest, and I'm sure that somewhere down the line, if somebody wants that in oversized, we will be able to get the chance to have all of static and oversized at some point.
Nightwing, the best DC character.
What did you say? Hashtag Forever Dick? Guys, vote never. That's just for Omar.
That's my Omni. So we have Batman again. This is the year 1 stuff, and then Nightwing by Chuck Dixon. Hell yes, we would need 2 volumes of that collected in there. I wonder if volume 2 would collect his year 1 again. I'm sure Crisis. Batman.
Almost certainly, yeah.
Then
some people just want all the year 1 material, as its own book.
So after Chuck Dixon left the book, Devin Grayson came on board and ran it for a few years, and there were choices made. And then Nightwing by Bruce Jones. Again, choice. Actually, this era is awful. Mark Wolfman. I'm not even going to lie. I don't think there's a single good thing in here. I think Peter Tomasi's might be the standout, and that's it. Of this era before it was, of course, rebooted with the New 52 stuff. And then Batman Dick Grayson. I love this stuff. The Batman by Morrison Companion. Then Nightwing Rebirth Volume 2. Now, this is the Rick Grayson era, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, this is the 2 issues of Percy right before something happens in the pages of Tom King that unfortunately gets him into a world of trouble where some people did not like the choices that were made in the book, followed after with Scott Lobdell on 8 issues of Nightwing right before Dan Jurgens tries to somewhat clean it all up before Batman Joker War happens, and suddenly he's okay again, which leads us right into the Tom Taylor run, of which we are getting an omnibus of it next month, which is insane to think about, considering that the series started 2 years ago. It feels like it hasn't been that long, but otherwise, we do have volume 2 here. I'm sure they will do it at some point, but you can vote for all of these Dick Grayson Omnis, who is also well collected, I will say, quite oddly.
Best DC character. I'm getting a lot of love in Omni format, so I'm all here for it. And 2 compendiums so far of the Chuck Dixon era. Outsiders. Let's see what we got here. Oh, man, we need some of the Batman Outsiders and then the classic stuff, the Judd Winnick stuff. So Batman and the Outsiders, the classic stuff. Outsiders by Mike W. Barr, which follows the Batman and the Outsiders when he's like, I quit. I'm out. No, he fires them. Never mind. He doesn't quit. It's Batman. They're
fired.
He fires everybody.
He fires everybody.
Everybody get the hell out of your own freaking headquarters. And then we have
Judd Winnick, one of our favorite runs, Omar.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, I love this run. This is the run that is...
It's right alongside Jeff Johns' Teen Titans, yeah. And they cross over quite a bit.
Crossovers and oh my god, man, I love this stuff.
It was my first introduction to Metamorphosis. So if you're looking for something like that, guys, Judd Winnick's Outsiders is definitely one for you. Batman and the Outsiders does follow. We do have, quite oddly, I cannot believe that Dan Didio wrote issues of Outsiders, but I did read those issues.
Yeah, I think it was the last part of that stuff.
Yeah, last part of it right before the New 52 relaunch. And then Batman and the Outsiders, which is part of the 2019 post-DC era, all by Brian Hill and Dexter Soy on illustrations. If you want Cassandra Cain, Katana, etc. on the book, that is the book for you.
And then Peter's... No one is saying anything bad about you, Peter. It's fine. We all read all your stuff at 3:00 in the morning. Robins, because there's definitely more than one. You have the Dick Grayson era. This is as the Golden Age stuff. And then again, Batman year one. Then you have the greatest Robin of all time, Tim Drake, baby.
Love him.
Better detective than Batman. I said what I said. And that is...
Ra's al Ghul agrees with you.
Oh, he's the man too. And then, of course, the long out of print Red Robin era by Christopher.
Yeah, Christopher Yo.
Chris Rios and Fabian Nicieza wrapping it up.
With Marcus Toe on art and Francis Manapul on the first 4 issues, if I recall correctly.
And those trade paperbacks, they never reprinted them as big, thick trades.
No,
and go and check out the mapping of those because that does include the big crossover, of course.
Yeah. I also find that particular era interesting because just like we had the alongside what we talked about earlier with Outsiders and Teen Titans, I would also argue that with Red Robin, you also have the Batgirl Stephanie Brown run, in coordination along with the same. They also had a crossover in there. So if you're a big Stephanie Brown fan or like you're big on spoiler, they do cross over. And this Red Robin book is definitely excellent in that point. Damian Wayne. We got my favorite Robin. We have the 2015. So this is the DCU, not the DCYOU era, and post where he is part of the Patrick Gleason drawn and written run, with him taking the reins over from the Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason Batman and Robin book and the We Are Robin crossover. And like we mentioned earlier, we also do have the Batman and Robin omnibus that we mapped earlier at that point. So this would have the same. Jason Todd is Red Hood. We do have volume
Spoilers.
2.
I want anybody getting busy with me later on. I've never read Red Hood and the Outlaws. Yep. I didn't know.
There you go. So yes, indeed. So you have volume 2, which is the New 52 and Rebirth. You have a lot of James Tynion written issues in here, along with Scott Lobdell getting back on. So the Rebirth run is different casts, 2 different characters as a part of Jason's Trinity, if you may, with Artemis and Rebirth's version of Bizarro and Red Hood Outlaw, the Rebirth Omnibus, which is, yes, when Red Hood just becomes 1 instead of 3. And we have that running up until 2021.
All right. Next. Yes, if it spoiled it for you, go and tell your friends that the poll is what ruined it for you. Not years of memes and GIFs on the internet. Sandman Universe. Not a lot left, but honestly, some great stuff. Like the Sandman Mystery Theater. Oh, that stuff is so good. But you're going with
we're getting a second compendium.
Yes.
Finally. So look, we could get a Golden Age Wesley Dodds book. I mean, it's clearly a very separate character with a very separate history, but he has a lot of material in the Golden Age that could fit all into one book. Mystery Theater, which is being pretty well mapped in the compendiums. Although, Dom, I forget, did they get Midnight Theater in those compendiums? I feel like they didn't pick up Midnight Theater.
I think they did. Yeah.
Oh, they did. Okay. So that would basically translate almost exactly to an omnibus. I would expect that this would be a little bit weaker on the poll this year because we've got the compendiums, but maybe not. People sometimes want an omnibus completely independent if they've bought the compendium or not. Then from the original Vertigo years of kind of the extended Sandman universe, of course, we've got all of the main Sandman stuff. There is nothing left to touch, but there are 2 books, and we've got Books of Magic, and we've got Lucifer. But Black Orchid does have, I think, one slim deluxe, but we don't have all of the material in an omnibus. Also, that omnibus would be slim enough that we could easily append the original Black Orchid 70s material onto that as a bonus, even though it would primarily be of the Vertigo years. And then, of course, the Dreaming, which DC had never cracked into. And even though I know there could be some hesitance with Gaiman's name on things, he did not write any of the Dreaming. It was by people other than him. Could we possibly see it hit compendium? I would personally just like it in an omnibus to sit right next to the Sandman Deluxe hardcovers that I've got on my shelf. Then we've pretty much got everything, especially because of Dead Boy Detectives picking up so many kind of random here and there stuff. But there's Sandman Universe things that happen starting in Rebirth. So Lucifer had his own series at the beginning of Rebirth, but then DC launched their whole Sandman Universe line. And each of those books ran from 20 to 30 issues. So there was Books of Magic, House of Whispers, Lucifer by Dan Waters, which was great. The
Agreed.
Dreaming, which is actually 2 different series, one by Cy Spurrier, which is incredible, one by G. Will Wilson, also incredible, and then Hellblazer by Spurrier, which we already talked about on the Hellblazer slide. And finally, there are a pair of series of miniseries, really, Dead Boy Detectives, which are not in the omnibus, and Nightmare Country by Tinian, so they could kind of be collected together as one of the last major works to close out what looks like the most recent period of the Sandman universe. Now, there's also, and maybe I have made a mistake by leaving it off here. Yeah, it's not on the slides, but it is on the poll. There's one more option on the poll, which is called Sandman Universe, The Vertigo Years Companion. So that would have all of those Sandman Presents miniseries other than Dead Boy Detectives, like Destiny, A Chronicle of Deaths Foretold, Witchcraft, La Terror, Sandman Presents Love Street. There's a whole ton of them. And now that we've already plucked out all the Dead Boy Detectives stuff, which was the longest stuff in there, it would fit perfectly into its own omnibus.
Well, thank you so much for that rundown, Crisis. Shazam, aka Captain Marvel,
or the Captain, as he is now called. I
That's
suppose.
so weird, but okay, whatever. The Fawcett years, the Golden Age Omni, Volume 1, 1940 and on. Could also include Captain Marvel Jr. Shazam of Earth S. I love that title. The World's Mightiest Mortal, the Bronze Age Omni, 1973 to 1982. That's the series that introduces you to Black Adam, I think. That's where he first appears, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the pre-Flashpoint Shazam, Power Shazam. Oh, yes. And then Shazam Billy Batson and the Magic of Shazam. That's the 2008.
If we can get a Scooby-Doo Apocalypse omnibus, we can certainly get a Billy Batson and the Magic of Shazam omnibus.
Don is heated on this topic.
No, I'm not hating on it. That was like, that's the kid one, right? Yeah, the all ages comic. And then Shazam by Jeff Johns, which, wow, some of those.
Yeah, you got the Justice League backups on top of the Shazam and the 7 Magic Lands 15-issue ongoing that he did. This would also, I suppose,
the New 52 backups. Dom, were those collected in the New 52 Justice League Omnis?
Yeah, they're all in the middle, like all wonderful. Like whatever's in the deluxe is wonderfully collected in the middle of it, like right before we get the Trinity War crossover.
Okay. And then Shazam by Mark Waid and Josie Campbell. I didn't know they were still going with that.
The run just wrapped up. Yeah,
it was good though.
Yeah, Josie Campbell's run is.
I like it,
mad dude. I love it, and it would also. This one I think would also include the new Champion of Shazam, which is also written by Josie Campbell with art by Doc Shaner. So you got a pretty nice collection of stuff in there. So you get Josie Campbell, also Doc Shaner on art and Dan Moore on art. So what less could you want as a DC fan?
Out of all of these, honestly, that Power Shazam absolutely needs it. I was so happy to see the Volume 2 come out. Like the Jerry Ordway stuff. But it was in trade paperback format. Would love to see that stuff collected in Omni. The Spectre. Spirit of Vengeance. Not the hothead from Marvel Comics, but the Spirit of Vengeance with the classic Spectre Golden Age Omni, 1940 and on. And then the Doug Mensch stuff. This is the stuff before Ostrander's run. This is 1987 to 1989. It's not collected in any format, is it? No DC Finest yet. And then Spectre by John Ostrander, Volume 2, because we know we're getting a Volume 1, and this would wrap up the series. Did we know that Volume 1 is getting or did I make that up? I'll ask my contact at DC tomorrow.
Wait, what?
It's supposed to be getting like a glow-in-the-dark cover.
What?
That's what they told. Like, that's. Okay, I'm gonna ask him again.
Yeah. That was something that you disclosed to me, but not to anybody else.
Oh, whoops. I will double check tomorrow. That I think they're gonna do.
Who's speaking out of school now?
Okay, that's on me. Sorry. I will ask them tomorrow to make sure. But I heard through the grapevine, started at crushingcrisis.com, that there's supposed to be a dark cover.
Could we get you a beer and talk about if we're gonna have a die cut Wolverine cover with the
yes? Oh my goodness, that's what Omar. That's what needs to happen for the Wolverine by Benjamin Percy.
Strike one indeed. Damn it, I was doing so well.
Like if we can get a die cut cover in one of the single issues of Percy Wolverine, we should be able to get one for Wolverine.
You
right?
know how long I've been pushing for David to do a die cut cover of Wolverine Omni 3?
And DC's gonna beat them to the punch with a glow in the dark cover.
They can already get the cool foils on all the covers, man. Come
I will
on.
find out for sure. I don't want to spread any rumors. Please don't start spreading rumors.
Cade82 just said in the comments that it was mentioned in the solicit. So,
oh, it's not on me. It's not on me. See, Dom, we're all good. We're all good. And then, yes, the Hal Jordan by J.M. DeMatteis. This is the stuff when Hal became the Spectre after he became the Parallax, and leads directly into the
Green Lantern Rebirth.
That's right. That's right. He'll show up later on. He'll show up in like the Green Arrow run. Suicide Squad, which, my gosh, we've gotten a lot of stuff here. But we need,
as of last year's poll, there was no omnibuses. We were on last year's poll being like, wouldn't it be nice if Suicide Squad there's only the Silver Age?
We got the new 52, and we got the, I'm surprised they didn't go with Rebirth, because the Rebirth has the Jim Lee artwork in there, but they decided to go with the new 52 stuff. And then, of course, the John Ostrander stuff. And then you, oh hell yes, you have the Giffen, Ostrander, and Willingham era here from 2001 to 2010. And then, of course, the new 52. Dom, who's in charge of the new 52 Suicide Squad in
Adam
here?
Blass?
What is the new Suicide Squad?
Wait. Okay, so New 52, the New 52 Omnibus Volume 2 is a continuation of the Adam Glass Suicide Squad run that started in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Rebirth era is Rob Williams. We have this, obviously, with the Jim Lee art, and that's mostly what people know it for. And yes, I would include the Justice League versus Suicide Squad issues in this specific omnibus. Tom Taylor took over the Suicide Squad. This is part of him and Bruno Redondo continuing their work together from Injustice 2, with Harley Quinn leading the charge and Deathstroke leading the charge, along with a couple of brand new characters of whom I actually grew a fondness for. Because part of what I love from the DC Finest of the Suicide Squad that I read is that all of these characters, even if they are like Bronze Tiger, D-list, F-list, whatever, you found ways to gravitate towards them. And Tom Taylor did a really, really good job of selling you on some of the brand new characters that he made for that Suicide Squad run. And the Robbie Thompson stuff could also be included here as well. But yes, so those are the post-2011 Suicide Squad mappings for the specific poll.
Now, there would be 3 volumes of the John Ostrander Omnis to wrap up that series. So here's hoping. And Bruce, thank you for the super chat. The glow-in-the-dark cover was revealed on the League of Comic Geeks website. Well, there you go. That's where I got my information from, as I get all my information from the League of Comic Geeks website. Thank you, Bruce. That was a good save. All right. Moving on to Superboy. Woo! Who wants to take over? Tigereyes, take over. We haven't heard you say much about the DC. What do you got here? What do you got here?
All right. So we got Gold, Silver, and Bronze Age. You have Golden Age Volume 1, Silver Age Volume 1, Bronze Age Omnibus Collecting Until Legion of Superheroes, The New Adventures of Superboy by Bates and Kepperberg, also known as the 80s Omnibus. Post-Crisis, you have the 90s Volume 1 with Roman art. And then Boy of Steel by Johns and Lemire. And New 52, the New 52 Omnibus Collecting 2011 to 2014.
I would love
it. What is the book that you would vote for out of all these Superboys? Right here. What's the one Omni you would vote for?
Probably the 94 series.
You're damn right. That's the one. That's the one. Peter, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's just fun. It's fun comic books. It doesn't matter if the character's prominent in continuity anymore. Some comics are just fun on their own.
He had sunglasses and a leather jacket and an earring. That dude was risen. Dom,
did you just no? You cannot use Gen Alpha language in the stream and get away with it.
Gen Alpha?
That is Gen Alpha.
Yeah,
get out of this room, Omar.
You're Gen Alpha take my Gen X music, and I don't like it. I'm taking your words just to make you all feel crappy.
You know what? Just for that, I am not good. No, because of my now weird love for all the old stuff, I would vote for the Golden Age Omnibus Volume 1 and onward.
I thought you were going to be nice to Omar because of your love for the old stuff. I thought you were calling Omar the old stuff.
I'm so glad. I actually know what aura means too, but you all
unfortunately, yeah. Please, Omar, please do not. I I already hear like sometimes my brother's playing video
I
games
hope
with
your
his
dad
friends.
said it to you when you're playing ball with him just to throw you off.
Oh, he will never say that because he talks Tagalog on the court, you know, so I don't have to hear from him.
All right, moving on to Supergirl. All right. Supergirl, the Bronze Age Omni, Volume 1 has not been collected. And then my all-time favorite run, Supergirl by Peter David, which is finally getting a DC Finest. Right? We're getting a DC Finest.
With early Gary Frank art.
Beautiful artwork, great story. Oh my gosh. Supergirl, the Girl of Steel. This is the relaunch after the events of Superman and Batman. So the Jeff Loeb era. It's Ian Churchill that does a lot of the artwork early on. Who takes over the book? Is it Sterling?
Sterling Gates. Sterling Gates was on a couple of different series, but I don't remember him being on Superman Batman. But that just might be my mind blowing up.
Okay, so apparently he's in the Supergirl, the Girl of Steel, issue 34. But who was it before him then? Joe Kelly? Was it Joe Kelly before him? Anyway, so yes, Supergirl, the Girl of Steel by Sterling Gates. That's the 2008 to 2011. Supergirl, the Rebirth Omni by Orlando Hauser and Andreyko. Plus Power Girl. Spoilers for Earth 2. Power Girl by Palmiotti, Gray, and Winnick. This is the 1988 to 2015 series. Power Girl, The Dawn of DC Omni by Leah Williams.
Which also just wrapped up not too long ago.
Crisis, you love that one, right?
Yeah, he does.
No, I do not. But I will say that somebody pointed out in a comment on Crushing Crisis this morning, as the hair and makeup team were rushing me to my trailer, that DC Dom, did they change the solicit for the new 52 superhero or Supergirl book to not have the whole series in it anymore?
You're correct. Well,
so
yet.
that was late breaking enough that's not reflected in the poll. So there could be a Supergirl New 52 Volume 2, but that change happened literally while we were putting the poll together.
Let me get the super chat really quick. Boomar, please don't try to relate to the youth anymore. Excuse me. It's what all writers do, including my boy Jonathan Hickman. I think he added Riz to.
If you say Riz again, I swear to God.
I was quoting Jonathan Hickman. It was in Ultimate Spider-Man.
Is he allowed to say
like, what are we doing, Jonathan Hickman?
Oh, no. It wasn't Riz. You know what he said? He said there's somebody in the book that says, let him cook.
Let him cook. Yeah, baby, let him cook.
No.
That's good, man. Look. Language is always changing.
Oh, by the way, that language is not reflected in Imperial issue #1. So if you are looking for something that isn't appealing to the youth by Jonathan Hickman, pick up Imperial #1 by Jonathan Hickman, Ivan Coelho, and Federico Vicentini. That comes out tomorrow.
I'm curious, Dom, how much of the 90s stuff have you read?
A good amount.
You ever get caught up like reading some of the language that we used to use in the 90s that you no longer use?
Yeah, unfortunately.
What do you mean unfortunately? That stuff aged well, my friend. Like fine wine. Dom is going to jump through the screen and get
I will.
Let me cook, man. Let me cook, baby. Superman. I'm having too much fun. I'm not even drinking. All right. Who wants to go through this?
Oh boy. All right, here we go.
Three slides. Go for it.
A lot of Superman, and there's a big year for our boy Superman. So look, we start with the Golden Age. There's more Golden Age material to do. We have just cracked into the 1950s, so there's 6 more years of Golden Age to collect. So if you want to start collecting that, Golden Age Omnibus Volume 8. Then we have the Silver Age, which DC did jump ahead and do one Silver Age Omnibus, proving they do not always complete one line before starting the next, but that's all they've done. So we could continue the Silver Age line. But then there's also the Bronze Age line, and we know exactly where the Bronze Age will start. It's actually where the DC Finest collections just began. But as Omar has pointed out earlier in the stream, just because the DC Finest comes out does not mean there's any kind of probationary waiting period to get an omnibus, because they've done some very much on top of each other. Then there's also Superman Team Up, which is actually not called that. It's actually called DC Comics Presents, but it was almost always was Superman teaming up with somebody, so we thought it'd be easier to find alphabetically that way. That starts in 1978 and runs for quite a few issues. We'd actually need 2 volumes to collect all of that. finally, there's Superman in the 1980s, and this is a new option on the poll this year because we realized that actually it's going to take a long time to get through all of that Bronze Age material because it has both Superman and Action Comics. So we also could start Superman from the beginning of the 80s, which again needs several volumes to collect. Then we leap to Post-Crisis, and of course, one of the most hotly desired books on the poll was in the top 10 last year. I'm sure it will do very well again this year, is Superman, the Man of Steel by John Byrne. Because we're not mapping ahead anymore, we did not put both volumes here, but it would collect the full line, not just Superman, because all of the line was written or at least advised in some way by John Byrne in that entire period. And it also can include some additional side series that are not in the John Byrne hardcovers, such as World of Krypton and the Daily Planet. Then, after John Byrne, we have the Exile Omnibus, but the Exile Omnibus does not collect all the way to the Triangle Era Volume 1 Omnibus. So we would need Exile Aftermath. We could also possibly call it Eradication. Whatever you call it, it fits between Exile and Triangle Volume 1. Then we have Triangle Volume 1 and Triangle Volume 2. And as we all saw, Triangle Volume 2, and a shock to many of us, is collecting into Death and Return material rather than just collecting around Death and Return. So that means Triangle Era Volume 3 is going to basically pick up from Superman returning, spoilers, and then collect in the direction of 0 Hour, although it probably will not get all the way to 0 Hour. We did not map everything in the middle of the triangle because it's just too ambiguous. There's no way to know how inclusive or how long DC is going to go with each of these books. However, at the end of Triangle, we can map a few things. And because of what's been released or announced recently, I'm actually going to start from the bottom bullet and come up to the two bullets before that. So DC announced Our Worlds at War Prelude to, or Road to, what is it called, Dom?
Gosh.
I think it's Prelude.
Yeah, prelude to the event.
Some issues too.
But, well, and it's missing some issues, and also it shows us that obviously we're going to need another omnibus to complete that, which will end the Triangle Era. And because they pulled so much into the first omnibus, it's pretty clear, at least it seems pretty clear, that the second omnibus will collect right to the end of the Triangle numbering. But that also means, because we've got a stake in the ground, we could also figure out what book would come directly before that, which would be the Triangle Era President Lex part of 2000 and 2001 that would fit before Our Worlds at War and also pick up some of those missed issues from Our Worlds at War. And because it has such a clear breakpoint right before President Lex, we also know what the book right before that would be, which would be City of Tomorrow, which got a compendium but could very easily be brought into omnibus format, which would be take us all the way back to the beginning of the year 2000 in Triangle. So we don't have anything from 1994 to 2000. I know there's a lot of good stories in there, Death of Clark Kent, Blue Superman, but it's just too ambiguous, and DC is clearly going all in on this Triangle line. So we will just have the next Triangle book on the poll every year.
And speaking of Triangle line, somebody asked, why is it called Triangle Era? On the top right-hand corner of the book, there was a triangle indicator, which told you, hey, this is what the reading order, this is the specific indicator.
To be fair, it's upside down too. Like, it's an upside down triangle. So it's a little misleading. Yeah.
It is, but that is why it's called the Triangle.
Use the shield. Remember, they wanted to use the shield, and they thought that was just too much.
I have heard about that story.
Yeah,
it's one of the greatest acts of sustained editorial coordination in the history of Big Two Comics. We're talking about 8 years of Superman, where every Superman issue that came out, aside from some prestige miniseries, had an explicit reading order on the cover. Krakoa wishes, X-Men wishes, Batman wishes. No one else has ever done it to the degree that the Triangle Era of Superman did.
God!
Kudos to Louise Simonson, Roger Stern, Jerry Ordway, Dan Jurgens,
and the editor at the time, Mike
McFarlane.
Hold on, the geometry nerds just stepped into the chat. Hold on a second. Let's see. A triangle is just 3 lines. It doesn't matter which way they're facing. There's no upside down. Thank you for that, Kyle.
Well, I mean, it's also 3 degrees that equal 180 degrees, Kyle. I'll let you know, Kyle.
Look, don't pull up Peter. He's already gone off on everybody in the reading comprehension. I don't need more people mad at me.
Oh my gosh. Let's please move on to slide 2.
Oh, so super chat. I'm so sorry, Kyle.
Do not read that super chat. Don't you dare. Oh my.
What the hell? Riz.
Riz, baby.
I think Dom has left the chat. Thank you, John. Kara Sorrell is her own character, you jabronis. Wow. You guys. Well, I know what Dom's kryptonite is, apparently, is my generation saying cool new slang. Ouch.
All right. So now we're after the triangle era. So this is one of those few times on the poll. I think we only did it 3 times where we double dipped something into 2 different books and people can just vote for what they prefer. So some people want to see all of the post-triangle era all in one book, still mapped together the same way Triangle was. That would be the second bullet there. Superman Post-Triangle Era Volume 1, line-wide Omni collects through Infinite Crisis. However, there were 2 substantial runs that kick off that Post-Triangle Era. One of them is Adventures of Superman by Casey and Rucka. The other one is Action Comics, which is written largely by Joe Kelly. So some people just want those books on their own, and y'all can battle it out in the votes because there was not a clear leader last year, and so we have them all on the poll again this year. Then we go from Infinite Crisis to Flashpoint. So Superman by Johnson Biziak. Superman by Biziak is one of the #1 most demanded things in the suggestions on the poll last year. Well, here it is. It's on the poll. But last year, the title was not as clear as this. So this is where it is. There's also Superman Confidential, which is actually a very short series. So if there's other Superman minis and one-shots in that era that you've always wondering, will they be orphaned? That would probably be in there as well. Then we get to a few big story arcs that would be collected all as big chunks. We have the complete New Krypton saga by James Robinson. We have Superman by James Robinson and JMS, which would collect around New Krypton because New Krypton really should skip issues. It's really just its own thing and it should be its own complete book. But then in Action Comics, there was World Without Superman by Rucka and Cornell. So that's its own chunk of run that would include everything with Nightwing and Flamebird, Black Ring, and the Reign of Doomsday. And then finally at the very end...
Nightwing, mind you.
What? Yeah, different Nightwing.
Nightwing. It is the Nightwing that he got his name from.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. And then right before Flashpoint, John Michael Straczynski wrote both Wonder Woman and Superman for about 14 issues. Both of them could probably be their own deluxes, but DC could just call it Wonder Woman and Superman by John Michael Straczynski and put them both in the same book. And then I'll turn it over to my young companion Dom to talk about the New 52 and Rebirth.
Oh my goodness, we got a lot of things to talk about the New 52. Obviously, we had the New 52 Grant Morrison Omni, which is just called Superman by Grant Morrison, quite oddly. But we have seen DC talk or use specific title names, especially with Detective Comics, like Detective Comics by James Tynion was called Batman, The Rise and Fall of the Batman. Superman is the same. So this time, and this go around, we do have an Action Comics that does follow up Morrison, including the Lobdell and Diggle licenses, would also include all of the Superman crossover issues like Hell on Earth and whatnot for, again, the New 52. We also have, as I skipped, but wanted to get through that first, we do have the New 52 Omnibus, and this would also collect the George Perez run that a lot of people actually also infamously talk because of the timeline follow-ups. Does this go before, after, during the Morrison run? Well, you get the chance to read that. Jurgens would take over from George Perez, followed again by Scott Lobdell. Like I mentioned, some of those crossovers like Hell on Earth would be included in there. Jeff Johns and John Romita Jr., who would take over the book, I think from like issues 32 to 40, if my mind serves correctly. And Gene Luen Yang, who authored and penned the Superman who is Superman? Who is Clark Kent? He would take over for the DCU parts of that era and on into Rebirth, or not on into Rebirth, but we do close it out there. We also do have the Superman and Wonder Woman New 52 Omnibus, which a lot of it was drawn by Tony S. Daniel, had Charles Soule in there. This is their sort of team up book. And by team up, I do mean, hey, they were romantically involved because that was the ship, if you want to call it, going around at the time during the New 52. And on to the 2016 post and present day, we do have the Action Comics by Jan Jurgens Volume 2, which would follow the Volume 1, which we are getting in late August, if my mind serves correctly. So this would collect the second half of the Dan Jurgens era of his brand new relaunch into Rebirth, and then the Superman Brian Michael Bendis run, which would collect essentially everything that he did from Superman and Action Comics and onwards, as he did take over on a brand new Superman run in 2018, and also Action Comics 1000 and onward with the Rogol Zar story, as some of you guys were mentioning in the chat. And then Action Comics Return from Warworld, which is the Superman team book, if you want to call it, right before we do have the book being taken over by Jason Aaron on issue 1061 to round off Superman.
Yeah, and that one, people in the chat are asking, how do we map the current Superman? There's just so much going on that it's hard to know now. Like, I would have said that those Superstars arcs would be anchored in an omnibus by Mark Waid doing Phantoms in Action Comics. But now that Mark Waid is taking over Action Comics again, that probably would just be collected along with that. Similarly, Dan Slott is now going to be writing Superman. So there's just a lot of upheaval and it's hard to know exactly what to collect. But the thing we do know is that Warworld omnibus stops before all of the Warworld plots really get resolved. So there's more Philip K. Johnson stuff. You could argue some of those issues have a lot of backup stories. Should all of the backups be in that book? That's an argument. I mapped it very explicitly issue by issue on Crushing Crisis, but just know that there is more Philip K. Johnson material, about 12 issues of it, that we need to follow up on that existing omnibus. And so there's other things we can include in that as well.
I just want to acknowledge the chat again that they have lost their damn minds and everybody.
I know.
Like, what are you talking about?
It annoys me. Oh my God. Do not say it. Omar, do not. No.
Super chatted. That's so
you don't have to read.
I hope John gets arthritis from typing that damn sentence. The Superman family, Silver and Bronze Age. Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, the Silver Age, and then the Bronze Age of Jimmy Olsen includes all the Kirby material through the end of the series, which of course was collected in the Fourth World Omni. Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, the Silver Age and the Bronze Age, and then Superman family, the Bronze Age Omni Volume 1. Post-crisis stuff. This is where Steel is the 1990s Louise Simonson, Christopher Priest, and John Bogdanove on artwork series, where you'll see him go through, I think, 3 different costumes is what he'll wear by the end of that series. And then the Rebirth era. Go ahead, Tom.
Rebirth era, we do have a couple of some of my favorite books.
Yeah. New Superman.
Onward. New Superman by Jin Wen Yang is such
Love
a
it.
heartwarming run
So
through
good.
and read through. And I cannot emphasize how many words I have for this book of love, empathy, and everything else with Victor Bogdanovich on art. This I would also assume collect, hypothetically, the backups that he did in some of those Jin Wen Yang, in the Philip Kennedy Johnson post-War World Returns omnibus. And Gene always says he's down for more and is just waiting on Paul Kaminsky to hit up, give him a call, say, hey, write some more content for us. Superwoman, the Rebirth Omnibus, there is a brand new Superwoman after the pages of DC Universe Rebirth issue number 1. And most of this is done by Phil Jimenez and Kate Perkins, but you also do have some artwork by Emmanuel Lupacchino also sprinkled in here as well. We do have a Bendis Companion, which does take us to the Jimmy Olsen series by Matt Fraction and Steve Lieber, Lois Lane by Greg Rucka and Mike Perkins, Leviathan, part of the Event Leviathan book, again from Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev, and also the Checkmate series by that same creative team. So if you want something to read alongside your Action Comics and Superman runs, you have that there. And we also do, because as we probably noted in this panel, Philip Kennedy Johnson does take Superman off-world. By Superman, I do mean Clark Kent. John Kent has to take over the mantle of Superman. Spoilers. This is by Tom Taylor and John Timms for the most part. And in fact, this spawned many a conversation while I was over in the dorms at UC Irvine. People were constantly asking me about news articles on this specific series. So if that is something that you're interested in reading, that is what we have for the Rebirth era and post Superman runs.
Oh, man, that is a lot of information. I just wanted to ask, you did put the new Superman, new Justice League series in that mapping, right?
Yes,
New
yeah.
Superman. Just making sure. We have one more super chat. Dom is Gen Z, so he is too old for Gen Alpha slang.
It's not too old for it's. I actually have no problem with Gen Alpha slang. I have a problem with people like Omar saying Gen Alpha.
Wait, like Latinos or older
No, I'm
people?
just talking about people in your age trying to use it as your own thing. You're like my dad and mom when they try to.
Wait, slow down. I'm not like your mom and dad. I'm a lot younger than your mom and dad. What is happening?
I don't know about that, Omar.
I don't know about that, Omar. No, man. No, not at all. No, nothing. No, it's just that when you get past a certain age, I think you should speak differently than people who are not that age. And that is where my problem comes in. So when I hear the RIZZ and AURA coming out from your mouth, it rings in my ear saying there is something wrong with my audio right now. That is my problem.
You got your skateboard over your shoulder and you're saying, hello, fellow kids.
I love that he's using me, not you and Peter, but just me as the person that
Are
should
you
not
trying
be
to say that I am old? Me?
No, I'm not. I would never throw a fellow 40-plus-year-old under the bus.
Just wait. See, the problem is that
Who's the elder statesman?
yeah. No, I was gonna say the problem is waiting. If we were actually talking about having another conversation, all of my slang is based on like drag race slang. So then I sound like a weird old person when I'm saying all those words, which we're not gonna say here on this.
You were saying slay.
I say slay. I say
Alpha.
rotted. I mean, I don't really have a lot. I could talk about omnibuses, I suppose, but let's move on.
You're free to use my slang anytime you want to. Your generation is allowed to use any slang you want to from my day.
You know, a lot of people grew up watching your channel, Omar.
Shut the fuck up. Why would you mention that? We were doing fine. So Dom is ageist. Hashtag cancel Omar. I'm the guy that started hashtag forever dick. I can't get canceled. Swamp Thing. Moving on. Swamp Thing by Alan Moore with the original colors, mind you. Yes. The 1984-1987 series, it would take 2 Omnis for that. And absolutely. And then the follow-up series, the Rick Veitch and Doug Wheeler series. This is between Moore and Collins with the unreleased issue, its finale. You know, Swamp Thing has been collected rather well, hasn't it?
It has.
Like,
I was
seriously.
kind of shocked that they did that Miller stuff, and like they're really crashing through it.
The Brian K. Vaughan would be a short run, and then the Diggle and that stuff is from 2004 to 2006. So that predates the New 52 stuff, which has been collected in Omni format. And then the most recent run, the Ron V and Mike Perkins. Man, this is cool.
Ron V has already told me that a Swamp Thing Deluxe is in the works.
We want an You call Ron V and you tell him what address we need to go
Not
to.
good enough, Ron V. Talk about people with great hair. Ron V has great hair.
Hey, yeah, he does have great hair. I agree.
Yeah.
Glorious.
And he used to live in Philly. I
He did.
probably
Would you
met him
tell-
at some point just crossing the street, being like, that guy also has nice hair.
Would you tell Ron V that he couldn't use certain slang of
He
your
doesn't
generation?
He doesn't use it, dude. That's
He
the
might.
difference.
He might if he's writing Young Justice one day.
He doesn't have Young Justice up his.
We will
sleeve.
see, Dom. I will
Okay.
like to take that bet.
All
All
right.
right. Speaking
Oh,
of
perfect segue.
totally planned. I totally looked at all the slides before going live.
I
Who
believe
wants
you.
to take over this? I'm a big fan, so
I'll take over because Lars also helped out with this one because he was incensed last year at our mistake, which is this. DC at one point solicited New Teen Titans Volume 6.
Yep.
However, the contents of that book were not actually any series called New Teen Titans. It was actually Teen Titans Spotlight. So we could have just put Volume 6 on the poll, but that would be confusing to people who didn't already know that referred to Teen Titans Spotlight. They would think it's that next book, which is also by Marv Wolfman. So if you're looking for what used to be New Teen Titans Volume 6, you're looking for Teen Titans Spotlight. All of the Titans books on the poll start with Titans, and then they have their title names so that it's easier to find them, because if we mixed Teen Titans and Titans, it would be all over the place. So then there's Titans, The New Titans by Marv Wolfman, which is what the series renames to after, I want to say, issue 50, Omar. And Wolfman continues writing not only that whole run all the way into like issue, I think he just doesn't write the last issue. And also Teen Titans, which a lot of people were wondering, like, where's Teen Titans? Wolfman wrote just about all of it. I think actually all of it. So that would just be in the Titans line. There would be no reason to separate out into its own line. So clearly we need multiple volumes of that, but that is what to vote for if you want the Titan lines to continue. Then after Marvel Wolfman is done, there's a variety of other Titans books. There's Teen Titans 1996 by Jan Jurgens.
Yep.
There's Titans 1999 by Devin Grayson, Faber, and Payer.
I think the
Then
only
there's
thing we got out of that was one trade paperback with the Justice League.
Yeah.
yeah.
it.
Then
it.
we have Teen Titans 2003, which follows the Jeff Johns Teen Titans, which they've never collected into Omnibus. Seems like an easy pick to me.
Time out. Real question here, Peter.
Yes.
Who mapped this one, and how good is it?
Couldn't have been me because I've never read it. I don't know.
Oh, you haven't read it? Okay. Did whoever map it put in the missing issues of Teen Titans that were not collected?
So issues 47 to 49?
No, the Rob Liefeld issues with Gail Simone.
No. Yeah, 20. So 27 to 28 or something
That's
like
it.
that, right?
Mhm.
27 to, yeah, but the last, like the 4 issues before issue number 50, because Johns leaves the book after issue 46.
Yeah, and it's only part of 50 that he did.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
he
what I'm
didn't do-
saying.
they
So
didn't
all of that would be in this hypothetical omnibus, which does collect it.
Nice. Okay.
McKeever run, you've got Terror Titans in there, unfortunately. And then when some
There's
of the other
miniseries like Cyborg, Raven,
yeah.
and Wonder Girl during this time too.
And
Good stuff
so
in
this is all the Young Justice are grown up, and then the 2018, which is Judd Winnick taking the classic Titans characters. So you got Nightwing, Starfire, etc. In that until 2011, which is the relaunch.
And is that it? No, part 2. Here we go.
I was gonna say, I was like, we have a lot of New 52 in post, which has been not greatly collected.
It's been collected in trade, though, right? It just hasn't been collected in any other format.
Yeah, in the bigger formats. So, so we do have the Scott Lobdell, Scott Lobdell, who is infamously known. You got Bartor, a couple other new characters who also pop up in this run. Red Beast Boy. Well, Red Beast Boy, a couple of, anyways. You have all of those coming into about in this 2011 run, and then the 2014 run by Will Pfeiffer and Kenneth Rockerford, if my mind serves correctly, where Wonder Girl is sort of the head of, or Cassandra Cain is, or sorry, gosh, I cannot say anything correctly. Cassandra Sandsmark is in front of the charge for that specific era of Teen Titans. Rebirth comes about, and we do have 2 specific books in the Rebirth era, if you will call it, for 2 generations of Titans. You have the older generation, which is your main classic Titans, realizing, hey, after after Titans Hunt, which is going to be hypothetically included in this omnibus, that there are parts of our past that we need to figure out, because wait, we are all friends. Wally West is a friend of Dick Grayson's and of Donna Troy's and of Roy Harper's. So that run is by Dan Abnett, and then the Teen Titans run, which is by Benjamin Percy. You have the quote-unquote younger characters, if you will. So your Aqualad, Beast Boy, Raven, and Damian Wayne Robin leading the team. When Percy leaves the book, Adam Glass takes over, and you have characters like Roundhouse, Crush, who is Lobo's kid, characters like that joining the team. So Damian and a whole bunch of other different characters. Young Justice and Naomi, this is part of the Wonder Comics line. I like that the Amethyst inclusion is in here by Amy Reeder. Young Justice Bendis gets a hand to relaunch the original Y4 with a couple of characters also thrown in there, and Naomi Bendis' creation, which eventually made its way onto the CW. Titans Academy in United, which is the Infinite Frontier line omnibus, and then the last one, which is the Tom Taylor and Nicholas Scott and Lucas Mayer run of Titans, which would include the Beast World event that just happened a couple of months ago.
There's a lot of bad in this slide. And I'm just being honest.
Yeah, you're talking to a Titans fan, Omar. I mean, it's like a roller coaster for me every single.
There's some good stuff. Don't get me wrong, but man, I forgot about some of this stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, Dell stuff. Yep, I can see why it hasn't been collected.
If you guys want Bartor as Kid Flash in Omnibus, vote for Scott Lobdell Volume 1. Don't look at me though.
Okay. Next up is the DC Trinity. Explain what this is, Peter.
So we were looking for a place that we could kind of group together all combinations of Batman, Superman, and or Wonder Woman without repeating them over and over across all of their slides. And so we put it together here. Pre-Flashpoint, DC could continue the World's Finest Silver Age Omnibus volume line. They need one more to finish that line. Then they can kick off a Bronze Age World's Finest line, or maybe you just want them to kick off Bronze Age now. It wouldn't be the first time. And then also there's World's Finest After Crisis, which is actually just a series of Batman and Superman team up mini series. There's like one of them versus vampires. There's one that's them called World's Finest. You could potentially make the argument that that should be collected in an omnibus along with their Batman and Superman series, but actually there's so many of those series that they could just make one whole book. Then also there's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman Trinity by Kurt Busiek, the weekly series from 2008 to 2009. And then finally, as we've already talked about, and we'll see it one more time in the Wonder Woman slides, there's Wonder Woman and Superman by J. Michael Straczynski, actually separate runs, but both in the same book. Then post-Flashpoint, we have World's Finest, which is actually not Superman and Batman. It is Huntress and Power Girl, and that's, I believe, set in the Earth 2 continuity, but it's still World's Finest, so we put that on here. Then we have Batman, Superman, the New 52 Omnibus by Greg Pak, which was an ongoing series. Then Superman and Wonder Woman, as we've already discussed in Superman, and we'll discuss again on Wonder Woman. That whole series has its own omnibus, which would probably have all of the Doomed crossover in it. Then Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman got their own book called Trinity in Rebirth, so that could collect all that. During that period, there was also a Batman, Wonder Woman, Brave and the Bold series that was written and drawn by Liam Sharp. That could be in there, and well, it fits in perfectly. Love Liam Sharp, one of my all-time favorites. Then there's Batman, Superman in Rebirth, part of which was written by Joshua Williamson, part by Jean-Nun Yang. And then finally, one of the currently running books we have in the poll is Batman and Superman World's Finest by Mark Waid. Why is it on the poll? Because now it has officially crossed into this would take more than one omnibus to collect zone, so we can safely put a volume 1. This would probably collect to around issue number 25 in annual 1 because there's a very clear breaking point there. But there was also the World's Finest Teen Titans miniseries, which is in the same style as this series and in the same period, which would almost certainly be collected in this omnibus.
Yes, sir.
All right. We got to get to voting soon. So let's move to the WildStorm era. Can we just skip it? Anybody? Just kidding. All right, Peter. Holy crap, Peter. 3 slides of WildStorm?
I will not rest until we have every WildStorm issue collected in omnibus. And you know what? DC's doing the work because we got 2 Authority omnibuses announced. So now there's way less Authority on the poll. We have an Authority companion to collect their 2 side series, The Monarchy and the Establishment. We have Authority Volume 3, which will collect everything from Volume 2 all the way to the end of World's End. We used to have it in multiple volumes on the poll, but DC has shown they will go big on these books, so we're trusting them. Then we have the Authority Midnighter omnibus, which would have all of Midnighter's solo material, could push all the way to Flashpoint. It all could fit. Then we move on to Gen 13. You know, if you want to have a map my generation, we could have a whole Gen 13 map my stream, because trying to map Gen 13 is frigging wild. They've so many one-shots, so many miniseries, so many side appearances that there's no telling how this book would be mapped. It could potentially only make it 13 issues deep into their ongoing because there's so much side stuff to collect. That's why we have it mapped ahead. But we did map their side team, which is kind of the negative reflection of them. It's like the bad version of them, which is DV8 that would fit all into one book. And then we can map the very end of Gen 13 for Armageddon and World's End, which is by Gail Simone and kind of is its own self-contained run. Then we move on to Stormwatch. Stormwatch Volume 1, which is material that I treasure. It's so good. It kills me that people don't know it because it's not associated with a big name, but it's basically everything that would come before the Stormwatch compendium that we have of the Ellis period, which I'm looking for on my shelf, but I must have finally put in a final resting place. So that would have everything from Stormwatch 1 to 36, including the Images of Tomorrow, my favorite image gimmick of all time. Then WildStorm Stormwatch Volume 2, which basically would be the exact same thing as that compendium that we got because it's mapped very well. It fits before the Authority. At that point, Stormwatch turns into the Authority, but there's a lot of DC years of Stormwatch where they're not those Authority characters. It's just a whole new team named Stormwatch that has Team Achilles, PhD, World's End. That actually could all fit into one book. So it was separate books last year. Some of them did very poorly in the poll, and so we combined them together this year. But finally, there was also Stormwatch in the New 52 as its own ongoing series that was integrated into the history of the New 52 version of the DC Universe. Some of you might be pointing out there was a little bit of Stormwatch material in that Batman, I forget if it was in Urban Legends or Brave and the Bold. That's not really enough, and it's separated by and has so many different characters in it that we really wouldn't want to squeeze it into this omnibus. But let's go to part 2, shall we?
Yes, sir.
So all of Team 7, we can get into one omnibus. That's kind of like, you know how like Wolverine and Sabretooth and Maverick are like used to hang out together? Jim Lee kind of reproduced that with Team 7, which was a lot of the heroes that were older, along with the parents of Gen 13. There was also Team 0, there was Team 12, all of that could be in this book. Welcome to Tranquility was one of the only WildStorm series that started in the DC era, and that was by Gail Simone. We collected all into one omnibus. Wetworks almost could fit all into one omnibus. We might need 2, although I'm sure DC would love to get it done in one. We had 2 separate ones on the poll last year, but we realized it actually just makes sense as a volume 1 that starts at 1994 and moves on. Then we get to my personal favorite, Wildcats. We have Wildcats Covert Action Teams volume 1, which almost certainly match the contents of that compendium, but the compendium actually could have included more stuff because there were mini-series that ran alongside the Robinson and Charest run at the end of this. If you look in Crushing Crisis, it's mapped explicitly what this would need to contain to not orphan anything, because then also to the side of that run there is Grifter's own solo series, which goes on for a while. Then we come back to Wildcats Covert Action Team volume 2. That's where Alan Moore picks up in the wake of the Wildstorm Rising crossover, and even though Moore tags out late in the 30s from this book, we would probably just continue collecting all the way to the end of volume 1 with issue 50 in that book. It also has a number of side series from that period in it. Then we have Wildcats the DC years, and we've collapsed these into one book. I know people are separately fans of Wildcats 2.0, Wildcats 3.0, Nemesis, World's End. It's hard to predict how it's going to break up. There's some of those series that DC could mash into single volumes together. So we're just saying if you want to dig into the DC years, you got to vote for that option and move forward. But then finally, relatively recently in 2021, there was a series of grifter stories in anthology books by Matthew Robinson, which led to a 12-issue Wildcats series on its own. Because of the addition of the grifter material and any other kind of side material that supports Wildcats, this is actually a little bit longer than deluxe length. I think it could be an omnibus.
Wait, don't you mean Rosenberg?
Oh, damn it. Yeah, it should say Rosenberg.
Moving on.
Again, I was not the only person who proofed these.
Fine. Strike 2 for Dom as well.
Strike 2 for Dom. I love that. I love that for us.
3. Let's keep going.
All right, hold on. I'm making a note to fix that.
Okay.
All right. So then we get to WildStorm events. So there was the WildStorm Valiant Deathmate. At the point that Valiant's material is out there again and that it's being actively printed by Alien Books and then distributed, I believe, by IDW, can DC do some negotiation and get this event with all of its classic 90s artists and writers together? It would be pretty cool. Then we have WildStorm Rising, which could be collected all together in one place. It was a really fun crossover that hit every book. Then the next line-wide crossover was Fire from Heaven. Then some people want Marvel versus WildStorm, which would have all of the individual Marvel versus WildStorm stuff like X-Men and Wildcats, but also all of the issue 13s of the Heroes Reborn period that Marvel could not collect in the Heroes Reborn omnibus because they have WildStorm characters in them. Then there's kind of like all of the mid-2000 events before Flashpoint. So Captain Atom goes across to DC. There's Dream World, there's WorldStorm, there's Armageddon. There's so many little mini event series. They could all go into one book. And then finally,
that was during the era when the rumor was they were trying to get rid of all the Fawcett characters. Beetle, Captain Atom was replaced by this Atom. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, then we get to WildStorm by Warren Ellis, which is its own continuity. And then there's some solo character omnibuses, Backlash by Brett Booth, which is a very popular one. Deathblow, which we could get all into one book. Divine Right, which is by Jim Lee, which has been collected several times, never an oversized. Grifter and Voodoo in the New 52. Then Mr. Majestic, who had his own series in the DC era where he actually interacted with DC heroes, but he also had his own materials in the 90s. Union, which is one of my cool favorite kind of very lesser known WildStorm books, which could actually be merged in with the Monarchy that we saw earlier on the Authority books because he was in that book. And then finally, a WildStorm companion for anything WildStorm you did not already hear me mention could be in there, like Brass, Hazard. I mean, there's so many other books.
All right, take a breath, because I don't think you know.
I can't, because now it's my other favorite Wonder Woman. Let's go.
Oh, are you?
I've got the hair. I've got the Wonder Woman hair. We're all ready.
Oh my God, Peter! I was gonna give you a break. Okay.
All right.
Woo!
She is my favorite. And Wonder Woman is having an amazing year because we got so many things announced. We got the Rucka Omnibus announced. We got Silver Age Volume 2 announced. We're really close to Wonder Woman full coverage in a way that we weren't a year ago. So to get through the Silver and Bronze Age, we only now need Golden Age Volume 7 to get us all the way to the Bronze Age, because Silver is covered, as is the Diana Prince volume, which bridges the beginning of Bronze. Then we need Bronze Age Volume 1, which would directly follow the Diana Prince Omnibus and include 12 Labors and collect those final kind of 130-ish issues that we've never seen in oversized, although finally got some of them in color in DC Finest for the first time. That's not the right one. It's not out yet, but it's going to be out. And
It's coming out in December.
Coming out in December for the first time. Okay, so then we go to post-crisis. We already have 3 Perez omnibuses, but we still don't have the one that Omar and I love, which is Wonder Woman by William Messner Loebs and Mike Deodato, with all those amazing Brian Boland covers. Oh my goodness, that'll collect all the way up to issue 100. But we do have the run that comes directly after that in the recently announced John Byrne omnibus. So then after Byrne comes Eric Luke, which fits exactly between Byrne and Jimenez. Then we skip over some stuff and we have Amazon's Attack, which is the run that happens right after Infinite Crisis that leads into the Simone Omni. It's only 12 issues of actual Wonder Woman, but it's got a whole crossover in there. And then finally, mentioning it for the 3rd time, there's Wonder Woman and Superman by JMS. But let's go to the next slide, because now we get to modern Wonder Woman. So in the New 52, we have the Azarella and Chang omnibus, but there was more material after that, enough to fit into a whole omnibus. I tried to squeeze in with other stuff. No, it's an omnibus on its own. It's by Meredith Finch. Then, as we've mentioned 2 other times, Superman and Wonder Woman. Now we get to Rebirth. So then we have Wonder Woman Rebirth Volume 1, aka by Greg Rucka again, which would be the first, I forget if it's 24 or 25 issues.
25 issues an annual, yeah.
Thank you, 25. We would not want to combine that with anything after it because it's very self-contained. We already talked about the Trinity book of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman together, but then there's 2 more Rebirth omnibuses that we could do that have very defined creator lines. Rebirth Volume 2, which is a little bit by Fontana and a little bit by Orlando, but mostly has James Robinson. That's the one with Wonder Woman's brother in it. Then finally, we have Wonder Woman, the Rebirth Omnibus Volume 3 with 3 runs that really work well together, which is G. Will Wilson, Steve Orlando again for a lengthier run, and then finishing out Mariko Takamaki. Finally, we roll into Infinite Frontier, where DC was flirting with removing Wonder Woman from continuity entirely. And so she's like in a totally different realm for a lot of this run. And that's written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad. It fits directly before Tom King. It could include all of the Nubia material, although that would make it pretty big, but it could fit.
Put all the backups by Jordi Belair in there. You've got yourself an omnibus.
Holy crap. DC events.
All right, Omar. This is you. This is you, baby.
We got this. Armageddon 2001 is all you people need to vote for. But I'm going to go ahead and be nice and say DC Events, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Volume 1 of 2. You people are crazy because that book is going to be mapped so weird, and I hope they don't do it in chronological publishing order.
It's going to be the same as the DC Finest, bro.
That would be awful. Oh, how is the DC Finest mapped?
The same way as the box set, seems like.
Okay, cool. Legends, the complete Omni, because this was a crossover. It just wasn't the 6-issue miniseries. And the same thing with Invasion. This does have artwork by Todd McFarlane. And Millennium, the same thing happened here. Could include the New Guardians, which I agree. It could. And I kind of like that. Armageddon 2001, the complete Omni. And I also want the original ending in here, too. But it does include the Alien Agenda and then the follow-up, the Armageddon Inferno. Eclipso, The Darkness Within, the complete Omni, including all the Eclipso 1992 crossover. That was done through a series of annuals. Yes. And then, speaking of annuals, the Bloodlines annuals, which all they did was introduce a bunch of new characters because aliens. And it was so weird, but they came with trading cards. The Elseworld annuals, again, separating the Elseworld books. That was all 1994. The Bloodlines Aftermath, the new DC heroes. Oh, okay. So this is including the series of Anima and Argus. Okay. Blood Pack, Gunfire, Loose Cannon. And that was done by the same gentleman that took over X-Force. I love his artwork. What was his name? Peter, X-Force. Or Adam Polina.
Yeah.
And then let me move on to Underworld Unleashed, complete Omni, again, a big crossover. I didn't realize there were so many events they needed to do. The Year One Omni, that would be all the annuals from 1995, and then the Final Night, which again could be collected in the Hal Jordan Spectre Omni, the Legends of the Dead Earth Omnibus, and the Pulp. That's another one of the kind of like Elseworld type of stories. The Pulp Heroes Annual, same thing. And the Genesis, the complete Omni. Genesis is finally being collected in the... Is it the Fourth World by John Byrne? What was it collected in? Just recently. Maybe not even
Byrne Wonder Woman?
A year ago. Maybe it might have been last year, 2 years ago. Time is just...
But it's not the full... It's not...
No, it just collects like the big chunk of it.
Yeah.
Day of Judgment, the complete... That's one of my most wanted as well. And part 2, the
It
Silver
was in Fourth World, by the way.
Fourth World. Thank you.
Yeah.
The Silver Age by Mark Waid from 2000. Our Worlds at War, Volume 2, the end of the Triangle era, and that will take us to the City of Tomorrow. The Joker Last Laugh. I actually have a custom one of that.
Ooh.
It's a big Nightwing Omni too. It's a great. I actually dig that story. Infinite Crisis Companion, the tie-ins from all the ongoing series. I think we mapped that last year, as well as the Aftermath. Again, the mapping will be found thoroughly at Crushing Crisis. The 1 year later, which is following the Infinite Crisis. This was all the series that jumped.
Every single series that had a or got affected by Infinite Crisis with a 1 year time jump. That is what will be in there.
And it's really cool because like Wonder Woman and Batman and Superman all are in different places in their lives 1 year after the Infinite Crisis. Countdown to Final Crisis. This has been collected in trade paperbacks. And Final Crisis Aftermath Omni, also collected in trades. The New 52. Dom, would you like to talk about these?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about the rest. Futures End, which follows Batman Beyond, and written by Brian Azzarello, Dan Jurgens, and a couple of other folks during the New 52. This was the first well, there were a lot of comic books that made me go, what the heck, back then, but this was certainly one of them that made me go, what the heck, back then. But it will collect the entire the entire yearly series. And I talked about Convergence earlier, where I said that Earth 2 Omnibus Volume 2 would be a prelude to it, or just sort of. This is the official event where Talos, somebody connected to Brainiac, gets to wreak havoc for an entire year. On the DC Universe, you will also have wonderful spin-offs and tie-ins, such as the Superman ones by Dan Jurgens and a couple of other ones in there that I thought were well done. My favorite one being the Shazam by Jeff Parker and Doc Shaner, two-parter that was... Man, I really wish they did a Shazam run because of it. Anyways, continuing on to Rebirth and present day, we do have Heroes in Crisis, which I am actually quite shocked that they have not done a deluxe edition or any oversized collection of. We just have the standard size hardcover and also the tie-in book called The Price and Other Stories and whatnot. Yeah, this was your chance and an opportunity to say yes to Tom King and Clay Mann and Mitch Gerrits on that specific DC event in the years 2018 to
very divisive. Very divisive.
Yeah, very divisive to the point where I refused to buy issue number 9 of the event. But that is another.
What if you
story.
get
all that Clay Mann booty?
If you get the Omni, are you gonna rip it out?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Anyways, continuing on, Year of the Villain, which I do find interesting. This is the 2019 event that started off with a Year of the Villain special around Free Comic Book Day, where Lex Luthor, I will just say, he gets something in Scott Snyder's Justice League, and he uses that something to give off those some things to certain villains in the DC universe, and they, in their own books, everybody gets a nice power up, and some heroes will have to fight harder than ever before.
In the catalog, and then they pulled it out of the catalog.
And then they pulled it out.
Still nothing.
Still nothing, but it is the same mapping. Future State, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, where this is pretty much just the brain. This was the combination of a brainchild between Dan Didio's wanting to do a sort of 5G reboot and DC saying Dan Didio no longer is the publisher of the company, and we need to move to something different. So you will have all of those series in that specific complete omnibus. This is where you also get the start off to some runs like Philip Kennedy Johnson's Action Comics and whatnot. Dark Crisis and Infinite Earths is Joshua Williamson's and Daniel Sampier's sequel and follow through to the original Crisis on Infinite Earths. Yes, you will see a lot of those characters from the original Crisis in this 7-issue mini event. Titans gets their own event in the pages of Beast World with Tom Taylor. Ivan Reyes's possible last pages for DC before he moves over to Ghost Machine. And Lucas Mayer. Hey, I really love Lucas
It was
Mayer.
so much fun. Just a lot of fun. Yeah.
A lot, yeah. Lots of fun. If you want Beast Boy doing some weirdo stuff and the Starros and the everything else, this is the event for you. And Absolute Power, very much in the same vein, I would argue, as 0 Hour is Mark Waid and Dan Mora doing the most recent, if you want to even call it crisis, because Scott Snyder said it was a crisis, so I'm just using his words, not mine, to formulate their own DC event, which then spins off into the DC All-In special and the current continuity now at DC Comics.
And I'm pretty happy with the mapping of that one too, because there's enough room for all the Road to Absolute Power, all of the tie-ins from the major books like Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, and Green Lantern and Green Arrow. So I think it would be a really great read. I actually sat down and read it all in order a couple months ago, and it reads really, the main Absolute Power series does not make a ton of sense. And then if you read it in order with all the other stuff, it's one of those events where all of the real happenings are outside of the main event series, and the event series is kind of just like the punching.
Yeah. And there's also a really nice tie-in with what's his name? Mattia de Ayula's art on the Birds of Prey backups in Batman. So that's something up your alley. Check it out.
All right, let's keep moving to everybody's been asking about where all of your other favorites are. Let's talk about it at pretty high speed. So these are groups and teams we have not talked about yet. Challengers of the Unknown, which could have a Silver Age omnibus. They also could have a post-crisis omnibus with a lot of their material over the span of 15 years. Checkmate, which we could have an immediately post-crisis omnibus by Paul Kupperberg, and then also the much-loved Checkmate by Greg Rucka stuff from the mid-2000s. It could include all of JSA versus Cobra in there as well. Dial H for Hero, we had so many people give great input on this, especially from the collectededitions.com boards, and we decided actually didn't make sense to try to split this up into multiple books. There's so many Dial H books or books that are similar to Dial H, like Hero Hotline and HERO, that we pretty much could just start from 1966 and collect all the way to the modern day, and that, so that's just one book that you can vote for now. The Forever People, which again also has all of their material from 1970 to the modern day. The Inferior Five, very similar. The Metal Men, which there is enough Silver and Bronze Age material that we probably could just get one book just of Silver and Bronze Age. Then we have New Gods by Starlin, Evanier, Payer, and Pollock from the late 80s to the mid 90s, which could include all of Cosmic Odyssey, if you would like to think about it that way. It's up to you. And Night Force, the complete stories by Marv Wolfman, starting in 1982.
And
then we have the Power Company's original run by Kurt Busiek in 2002. We have the Sideways book that Omar contributed, and we've tried to give it a title that's very indicative of what it could be, which is all of those New Age of Heroes series that were not long enough to collect on their own. So Damage and Silencer both got their own entries on the poll. Those were 20-plus issue series once you include everything. All of these were only 6 to 12 issues, and Sideways itself, I think, was only 14. So we could have Sideways and the New Age of Heroes all in one book, which means this is kind of a team book that has the new challengers and the unexpected and the Immortal Men in it. Sovereign 7 by Chris Claremont, his own kind of semi-creator-owned property in the DC universe. I have it perfectly mapped, and I've got it bound up with a rubber band ready to bind, but maybe DC could just do an omnibus or at least a compendium. And then Stormwatch and New 52, which we've already talked about. The Terrifics, which were also part of that New Age of Heroes. This was a charming book, which combined Mr. Terrific along with Plastic Man, along with Tom Strong, and a very unlikely team. And it's written half by Jeff Lemire, probably my favorite Jeff Lemire book, and half by John Lee Yang. Then The Movement and the Green Team from the New 52, both socially conscious DC books. The Trinity of Sin from New 52, which would collect the ongoing series from Phantom Stranger, Pandora, and The Question, which all contributed to all that Blight crossover stuff, but they had their own series issues that have never been fully collected. Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters, which happened in the 1970s, but then got brought back much later. We could have all of their material in this. And then some people, some freaky people out there want Watchmen and Doomsday Clock all together in one omnibus. Well, that's what to vote for if you do. And finally, Wildcats. See here, written by the right person.
He's right here.
Wildcats and Grifter by Matthew Rosenberg. So that is all of the groups and teams we have yet to talk about. But let's keep rolling because we have 9 slides of DC heroes.
We're gonna fly through this.
We're gonna fly. So there's Adam Strange from 1972 on. There's Ambush Bug. There's Amethyst. Some people in chat asked about it. There she is. It can collect all of her series. Angel and the Ape, which was a new suggestion for this year. I've researched all of their issues, and there is enough for an omnibus. Animal Man omnibus mapping. We'd only actually need 2 more books to completely collect omnibus. Animal Man Omnibus, which would be volume 2 by Milligan and Veitch, and then volume 3 by Delano and Prosser. Super clear what they would include. Then we have 2 that I believe Larry's library mapped for us. First, Arik, Son of Thunder by Roy and Dan Thomas, the complete series. The other, Arion, Lord of Atlantis by Paul Kupperberg and Yonder Sema, both of which are spin-offs from Mike Grell's Warlord. Then we have 4 books from Adam. He almost had enough books to get his own slide. Silver Age Adam, Bronze Age Adam, Power of the Atom by Roger Stern and Tom Payer from the 80s and 90s, and the Modern Atom run by Gail Simone from 2006 to 2008. Let's keep rolling. Now we're into the Bees. Black Adam could have his own omnibus if you would like, with all of his excerpted major arcs, largely from the JSA in that period. Black Lightning, which could be a complete omnibus. We've mapped it out. It could fit everything from 40 years of Black Lightning, would be a fantastic read. Blue Devil, who could have his own omnibus of his 1984 series. Booster Gold, we only have 2 omnibuses we really need. One by Johns, Giffen, and Jurgens from 2007 to 2011. And also you could just append the 2014 to 2022 material. And also Booster Gold, the classic omnibus from 1986 to 1988. Captain Atom has 3 books that we need. Actually more than 3, because one of them would be 2 volumes. First, that Captain Atom and the Blue Beetle, Charlton Years omnibus we talked about earlier. Then Captain Atom by Carrie Bates from the 80s. That would need 2 volumes, maybe even 3 to get all the way through it. And then Captain Atom's modern material, which would cross through all of that Wildstorm stuff into his New 52 book, and then past that into the Rebirth era. That would be the modern years. And then somebody in the chat asked for it. We didn't forget about you. Captain Carrot and his amazing zoo.
Yes!
Soon to be a DC finest, I'm sure.
So now we go to chase a book that's been well collected in paperback, but we could get it in omnibus as well. It's got that, I believe, early J.H. Williams art, if I'm not making that up. There's 2 omnibuses. We could have the Creeper, Bronze Age, and Modern. We have Cyborg, who actually does not have that much of his own solo material. His New 52 and Rebirth runs are both short enough that we could put them together into one book. Damage, there's 2 books worth, a 90s omnibus of Damage, which a lot of people remember with great fondness, by Tom Joyner and Bill Merriman, and then Damage, the New Age of Heroes omnibus by Robert Venditti and Tony Daniel. Then we have Dead Man, the modern omnibus by Kelly Jones and all, starting in 1985 and on. We have 3 Demon Intriguing books. We have a Bronze Age omnibus by Jack Kirby, which would recollect some material but would expand past what's already been collected, with a post-crisis omnibus by Grant and Zemeckis, volume 1 of 2. And then we have Demon Knights from the New 52. And then finally, the Elongated Man has enough material for his omnibus. Speaking of things that are elongated, let's go to slide 4. Here's Firestorm, who I love. We have Firestorm, Fury of Firestorm, the Nuclear Man. That would need 2 omnibuses. That would be his late 70s to mid 80s series. Then there's Firestorm by Jolly Moore and McDuffie from the mid 2000s. And then finally Firestorm in the New 52. Then we have Frankenstein, Agent of Shade in the New 52, largely by Jeff Lemire, never fully collected. We have Grifter and Voodoo from the New 52, which we've already talked about. It could also include Team 7. Hawk and Dove. Some people ask for pre-crisis Hawk and Dove material. That does not have enough to be in its own omnibus, and some of it's already in the Teen Titans omnibus line. Our Man by Tom Payer. Human Target, which has 2 omnibuses that we need. One for his Bronze Age material, largely anthology stories, and one for his material by Peter Milligan, the Vertigo series. Then we have 2 books by Jonah Hex. We have Jonah Hex, the classic omnibus from 1970 and on. That would actually possibly take more than 2 volumes. And then we also, because it's a very long series, and then we have Jonah Hex by Palmiotti and Gray. We would need 2 volumes here, which on the other side of volume 2 would meet up with the All-Star Western omnibus that DC announced, but then did they cancel it, Tom? All-Star Western? No, still on the schedule? Okay, cool. Let's go to slide 5. So now we've got Kamandi, the Last Boy on Earth, continuing from the Kirby omnibus. We've got Kid Eternity, a complete comics collection of all of his material from the Golden Age to the 90s. Loba by Keith Giffen and Alan Grant, starting with a volume 1 that would probably very closely map to the contents of this compendium. Manhunter, some people in the chat were asking about. There's 2 Manhunter runs, one by John Ostrander, one by Mark Andreyko. Then we get to Martian Manhunter. Sorry, he got his own slide. I just forgot to pull them out here. So let's skip him and go to Amazing Man, a character I didn't even know existed, but there's enough for an omnibus, followed by Metamorpho, who did have his own Silver Age showcase, and he also is getting a DC Finest, so clearly there's enough for an omnibus. Mr. Miracle, we'd really only need 2, one Bronze Age omnibus, which would duplicate some Kirby New World, but also extend past it, and Mr. Miracle, the post-crisis omnibus, as he has solo series in that period. Let's go to slide number 6. Now we've got,
vote for Kate Spencer. Or Mark Draco. Just
a lot of big fans of that run. So now we're into OMAC by Kirby, Rucka, Byrne, and Jones. Basically all of the OMAC exclusive material from over 30 years. Peacemaker, the complete omnibus, which could map even better than the DC Finest. The DC Finest is mapped pretty well, but it could do better, and I have that map on Crushing Crisis. Plastic Man has as much Golden Age material as Wonder Woman. He had the same amount of issues as Wonder Woman. It's crazy to think about. So he could need as many as 7 Golden Age omnibuses. But then in the Silver and Bronze Age, we could get through all of it in one omnibus, so much less than Wonder Woman there. And then we could have Plastic Man's modern omnibuses, which would recollect a lot of material, including the material in that Rubber Band Deluxe edition. Then we could have Promethea by Alan Moore all in one book. Would DC ever do it? If it pissed off Alan Moore, maybe. We have the question Renee Montoya from 2007 to 2011. Yes. I think that would have Crime Bible in it, one of Jess Bragg's favorite series. Ragman, the complete omnibus. The Ray omnibus by Christopher Priest and everybody else in the 90s. Red Tornado and Primal Force. Resurrection Man, which I have mapped perfectly. I own every single issue. I know exactly what would go in. It would be every Resurrection Man story and every Body Double story ever, from his introduction by Abnett and Landing to the conclusion of the Abnett and Landing New 52 series. Then we have Richard Dragon in omnibus, Rip Hunter Time Master in omnibus, Rosen Thorn, the complete omnibus all the way from the Golden Age, and Sandman Wesley Dodds, which you already saw in the Sandman's line, but repeated here for good measure, his Golden Age material. Then we have Sergeant Rock, which we'd have a Silver Age omnibus line, which would really need a lot of material in it, and then a Modern Age omnibus of his material from 1992 on. Shade the Changing Man, one of the biggest victories coming out of last year's poll. We got to Shade the Changing Man Volume 1, but will DC hurry up and give us Volume 2? If you vote for it, they will, and that's by Peter Milligan. Then we have Sideways, again listed here because, again, Sideways is also a solo character. Then we have Silencer, another one of those DC New Age of Heroes omnibuses. That was by Dan Abnett, John Romita Jr., and Ken Marion. We have Spirit by Cook, Avanier, and Plug. We have Stanley and his Monster, another thing I didn't know existed until the comments from last year's poll. Starfire, which we mapped enough of her individual solo material to say that we could probably get it all into one book. And Stargirl, all of Stargirl's solo comics separate from her participation in the JSA from 1999 and on. But wait, we have 2 more slides. Let's keep going. Then we have Starman. Starman has Golden Age material. And then a lot of people forgot that there was a Roger Stern and Len Strzelecki Starman series that came before the James Robinson series. So we could fill that in. But of course, the thing that everybody really wants is Starman by James Robinson, probably 2 volumes of his 1990 series that we have in Compendium. Tom Strong, we broke it into 2 halves. There's the main portion of Tom Strong by Alan Moore. That's 1 omnibus worth. Then there's the Tom Strong Companion, which has some of his side series, but also some Tom Strong stuff from after Alan Moore. There is Vigilante by Mark Wolfman and Paul Kupperberg. It feels like at the point that we have the question, like the next one to do is Vigilante. That's just me. Warlord by Mike Grell, Volume 2. Since we have a Volume 1 announced, we probably need 3 volumes. Zatanna, the early years, which would be all of her Silver and Bronze material. And then Zatanna, the modern years, which would be all of her major stories, one-shots, and miniseries from 1987 on. I know we're at Z, but we have 1 more slide because we put all of the DC villains on a slide. We could have a Bizarro omnibus, a Black Adam omnibus. He was earlier, but he's also kind of a villain. A Brainiac omnibus, a Darkseid omnibus, a Doomsday omnibus, an Eclipso classic omnibus, but then Omar already talked about DC Events Eclipso, The Darkness Within, which would also have his entire 1992 series. Cobra, which we did a lot of research on because somebody suggested it, and there's enough Cobra material for actually probably 2 volumes, but you could squeeze it all into 1. Lex Luthor and a classic omnibus, which would mostly just double dip Superman, but would have all of his material in 1 book. The Secret Society of Supervillains, which also could include other Sinestro and Captain Comet material from the Bronze Age, since it's a pretty short series. And then Solomon Grundy, who we just love that it's called a Born on a Monday omnibus, and that's why it's still here on the poll. Those are your DC solo characters.
Woo! All right, take a breather. Let me handle the next slide. The Vertigo, the non-DC universe, which we brought this time for the first time. I don't think we had it last year. We decided to omit it last year, and this year you all spoke up and said you wanted it. You okay, Peter?
Yeah, and I will say too, it wasn't that we were just being obstinate.
Stop talking! Just nod your head!
No, I just want to say, we want last year's the first poll, and we cut Tigereyes, like we really like met and talked about this, that like we wanted to just start with, let's just measure the demand for the DC universe, because if we start with everything, if we start with the Adventures of Bob Hope, if we start with every Vertigo book, it's going to be hard to know what the Vertigo book demand is compared to the DC demand. Now that we have the baseline of net last year, we went through and researched every Vertigo book, and I will say, I'm not going to talk during the slide. Anything that was 12 issues or less, we did not put on the poll unless there were multiple things by the same author that could be grouped together. But if it was at least 13 issues, we called it an omnibus, even though in your mind, that might be a deluxe edition.
Okay, now you good? Take a breath. Yeah. Take a breath. Drink your water. Don't forget to stay hydrated. Let me get the super chat really quick. Miss Universe Latina was shorter than the stream, and that program was like 16 hours long. Love you all. Thank you for doing these. You're so
Is that
welcome.
Omar's new nickname, Miss Universe Latina?
You're supposed to be quiet right now. Just stop. Just breathe.
All right, Miss Universe.
Miss Universo. Okay, part 1, Vertigo, American Century by Howard Chaykin and David Tishman, 2001-2003, American Virgin by Siegel and Clunan, and Army at Love, which doesn't get enough recognition. Clean Room, it's one of the most horrific stories that Gail
So
Simone,
creepy.
and it's excellent. Codename Knockout by Robert Rohde, Coffin Hill by Caitlin Kittredge and Inaki Miranda. It's a 2013-2015 series. That must have been towards the tail end of Vertigo, because by then we were starting, we were getting the Black Label stuff. Crossing Midnight, the Mike Carey and Jim Fern series. Dead Enders by Ed Brubaker and Warren Please. That is another series that doesn't get talked about often. DMZ has been collected in a series
Compendium.
of 5. Yes, in a compendium, but it's also been collected in 5 deluxe editions. Put them together, probably 2 volumes, much like they did with Scalped. Fables. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's talk about Fables. Breaking It Down by Ferris, by Bill Willingham, Jack of Fables, and also Fables by Bill Willingham. That's the ongoing series. Wolf Among Us, that's the newer series, or the last series when he came back. And then the Federal Bureau of Physics.
Love that book. So fun. Great
I've
art.
ever read that one. Flinch, and then Greek Street by Peter Milligan. Wow, that is a deep cut right there. Hinterkind, Loveless, Northlanders by Brian Wood. That was also released. I know that never got an oversized hardcover. Outlaw Nation by Jamie Delano, and then Red Thorn, Seekers into Mystery by J.M. DeMatteis. That is another one I forgot about. Sweet Tooth by Jeff Lemire, another one that was released in 3 deluxe editions. Testament, and moving on to the third slide, Crusaders by Steven Siegel and Kelly Jones. Exterminators by Simon Oliver and Tony Moore of Walking Dead fame. The Losers by Andy Diggle and Jock, made into a movie. The Unmen by John.
I will point out The Losers is technically a DC property because it's based on a property from the 70s, but it was under Vertigo and it did not participate in DC continuity. And actually, Andy Diggle said he never even read the original comics. So it's kind of like one of those murky areas where it's like a DC book, but it's a Vertigo book. Anyway.
I got you. The Unwritten, which is a phenomenal series by the same team that did Lucifer, Mike Carey and Peter Gross, and then Vinyl Underground by Cy Spencer, Transmetropolitan, which has been released in absolute format, and Unfollow by Rob Williams, the Vertigo crime graphic novels. Can you tell me, can anybody besides Peter tell me a little bit about that one? Since he talked so much? Nope, nobody. All right, Peter, what is this?
It was kind of like a line of related stuff, and Vertigo didn't often do that, but in this case they did. So it was just a number of it was all different authors. Brian Azzarello did Filthy Rich, Ian Rankin did Dark Entry, there's The Chill, The Bronx, Area 10, The Executor, Fogtown, The Sickness, Ratcatcher, Noche Roja, 99 Days, Cowboys, and Return to Perdition. But they were all standalone, all issued under that title. And then the same for this next one, Vertigo Voices, Verite, and V2K. They were 3 separate kind of sublines. They don't all go together, but all of them have like about 8 to 12 issues worth of comics, and they're all from the same period. So it kind of makes sense to just think of them all as one Vertigo book.
Okay. And then Young Liars by David Lapham. All right. Moving on to Creator-centric.
Ooh.
Did something happen? Okay. That's okay. That's okay, Peter. No worries. No worries. You just made one mistake. Dom, you want to go through these?
Yeah, let's go ahead and run through them. We have a couple of DC universes, just as people wanted. A lot of these. We have the first one, which is Alex Toth, Volume 1, which is 1947 and onward with his creation. Bernie Wrightson, 1969 and onwards, which would include 70s anthology works. Jack Kirby, Silver Age, Volume 1, 1956. John Paul Leon, R.I.P. to the Man, 1993 and on, which will include Wintermen. Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, 1975 and on, which includes Cinder and Ash. Keith Giffen, Omnibus, Volume 1, 1977 and on, Another Man, R.I.P. Paul Dini, Omnibus, 1992 and onward, which will collect famous issues, original graphic novels, and brief series and runs by Dini. So, hey, maybe you get Mad Love thrown in here as well, along with the Eduardo Rizzo autobiographical Dark Knight novel that I really liked, which would be awesome. DC Universe by Tom King, Black Label and Vertigo and Onward. If you don't want just those DC deluxe editions and want them in a nice omnibus format, you will get all of this non-continuity material, including Rorschach, Human Target, Jenny Sparks, and Danger Street. And in continuity stories, so we are talking about books that DC does label as, hey, these did not happen in Black Label or Vertigo or whatever they would like to call it. So this would include Omega Men, Mr. Miracle, Supergirl, the Penguin with Carmine Di Giando Medico, and etc. If we move onward, we have DC anthologies. So we have two parts for this. This would include Action Comics, Terra, and the pulp heroes of the Golden Age. We have had Superman, well collected with Golden Age. But how about Tatar, who also appears in a lot of those volumes? This will be in a volume 1, 1938 and onward. Action Comics Weekly, the Omnibus, which would include Green Lantern, Black Canary, and more. Adventure Comics, the Anthology Stories, volume 1, 1938 and onward, which are stories not collected in those superhero omnibuses. This would just be those non-Superman, Superboy stories, what have you, in Adventure Comics. Brave and the Bold, the early years, 1955 and onward, which is going to collect around Suicide Squad, Hawkman, etc. And the early you have the team ups by Mark Waid, which are from 2007 to 2010, which includes Scott Collins art, George Perez art, and Jerry Ordway art. Batman, Urban Legends, and Brave and the Bold. We mentioned this earlier. This is part of an anthology series that does collect Bat Family stories and also team ups with Batman and some other heroes. Some of them are in black and white. DC Special Blue Ribbon Digest, the Omnibus, is getting one, 1980 and 1982, along with a DC Special Series, the Omnibus, from 1977 to 1981. Detective Comics before Batman Omnibus, 1937 to 1939. So if you want to read,
was solicited and canceled, if I recall, or like as a box set.
Yeah, it wasn't solicited. I think it was just cataloged.
Yeah, cataloged, but never made through. 2
volumes in a slipcase. You are right.
Indeed. So if you want to read everything before Detective Comics issue number 27, before the Batman appeared, you can talk about that in the Batman or the Before Batman Detective Comics Omnibus. Forbidden Tales of the Dark Mansion, the Bronze Age Omnibus, is getting one from 1971 to 1974. If we continue on with part 2, House of Mystery, which we are getting to see in DC Finest, which is always a cool thing to see. We got the Vertigo Years by Lila Sturgis from 2008 to 2011, along with a Bronze Age Omnibus Volume 4. I think they have done a great job with collecting these in the Bronze Age omnibuses, but we do not have a volume 4 yet, so this would be 1977 and onward. And in that same breath, we do have House of Secrets by Steven Siegel from 1996 to 1998, which is the Vertigo series, along with a possibility of a Silver Age omnibus volume 1, which is from 1956 and onwards. Moving on, we do have Legends of the DC Universe from 1997 to 2001, along with My Greatest Adventure volume 1 in 1955 and onwards. So everything before the Doom Patrol with Arnold Drake and Bruno Parmigiani showed up, this would be in this My Greatest Adventure Omnibus. My Mystery in Space Volume 1, which is the non-hero stories, this would be from 1951 and onwards, along with Secret Origins Omnibus Volume 1 from 1986 to 1990. Secrets of the Sinister House, the Bronze Age Omnibus from 72 to 74, along with Showcase, the Silver Age Omnibus Volume 1, 1956 and onwards, which are all the issues collected sequentially. You also have Strange Adventures collected in here, featuring Captain Common in this Golden Age Omnibus from 1950 to 55 and 1976. And we do have the Silver Age Omnibus from 1955 and onward. 2 last ones from Tales of the Unexpected, the Silver Age Omnibus Volume 1 from 56 and onwards, to the Witching Hour Volume 1, 1969 and onwards.
This is the Elseworlds right here. And this has Arrowverse Omnibus based on the WB.
Your favorite version of Arrow.
And my buddy Omnidog right here. This is for him. DC Comics Bombshells. He was a huge fan of this series. The DC manga, Batman Justice Buster. Would this be in a Tankobon size, or would it be in a normal omnibus size? One Operation Joker, DC manga, Superman versus Meshi. My buddy Wonder Man would be over that. DC Superhero Girls Omnibus, the cartoon tie-in, the DC Universe Online Legends, the tie-ins to the video game, DC versus Aliens and Predator Omni. Oh my gosh, hell yes, especially for that Batman and Predator. So those first two. DC versus Vampires, Earth 2, the New 52 Omni Volume 1.
We already talked about all those on the JSA slides.
Earth 1, the complete graphic novels, 2010 and on. Yeah. This is the ones by Morrison,
Johns, Lemire,
all those guys. Green Lantern, the animated series Omni, the Justice League Adventures in the DC Universe, which is another cartoon tie-in, Justice League Unlimited, the Cartoon Network comics, Kingdom Come, the complete saga. This is just not only collecting the original Kingdom Come, but other things like the Kingdom.
And I think Thy Kingdom Come and Mark Waid's return to Kingdom Come.
Oh, yeah.
In the pages of Batman, Superman, World's Finest.
Yep. Legion of Superheroes into the 31st Century. This is another short-lived cartoon series, but these are comics. Smallville, the tie-in comics right here, including season 11, which never aired, of course. Super Friends, the original years, again, cartoon. Superboy, The Adventures of TV Superboy, non-continuity. And Superman Adventures Volume 1, which is getting a Omni. Or no, a compendium.
That I will be covering on
interesting choice, but that's okay. Superman Elseworlds Omni Volume 1, Tales of the Dark Multiverse, and then the Tangent comics and Tangent Superman's Reign. Remember when Dwayne McDuffie was trying to bring Tangent back during his run on Justice League? Teen Titans Go, and then Tiny Titans. Oh, my daughters learned to read because of this series right here. I always brag about how they knew their Wonder Girls, Donna Troy and Cassie, before they knew their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s.
So cool.
That's Tiny Titans. Go and read that to your kids, by the way. Wonder Woman 77, Young Animal, the complete Omni, and that includes the Doom Patrol, Mother Panic, Shade the Changing Girl, Cape Carson and Milk Wars, and Young Justice, the cartoon. And DC miscellaneous titles. Peter?
A lot of Westerns wound up fitting into this, but also a lot of short comics that weren't quite hero comics. So you'll see Batlash here, various runs of Black Hawk, Boy Commandos. Here's where we put DC Challenge and Commandi Challenge. People were asking about it earlier. I know it's a weird spot to put it, but it's not really an event. DC Focus, which was a complete mini line of series that could all go into one book. DC Swords and Sorceries, which there were a lot of kind of sword and sorcery short running series in the Bronze Age, including Hercules Unbound, Claw, Beowulf, and Sword of Sorcery. Western comics starring Johnny Thunder and the Wyoming Kid, which can compile several Western titles that starred those two characters exclusively. Enemy Ace, Fox and the Crow, Great Disaster featuring the Atomic Knights, which was a showcase volume, and Haunted Tank, which would have some stories of the Haunted Tank from GI Combat. Moving on to slide 2 here. Repeated that one. 2 I Vampires, the classic I Vampire stuff by Mitzi Mateus, and also the modern New 52 stuff, which is pretty fun read by Joshua Hale Fialkov and Andrea Sorrentino. Kind of the star-making run for Andrea Sorrentino.
Comics, wow!
We went deep. The original losers from the Bronze Age, Mad Magazine, which DC has the right to print. It was originally subtitled Tales Calculated to Drive You Mad, starting in 1952. Men of War, the complete series, more fun comics, the pre-hero Golden Age. Our Army at War, which could omit stories from other Omni lines like Sergeant Rock, because a lot of them crossed into Our Army at War, but there's plenty of one-shot type stories in Our Army at War. All of Piranha Press, which actually probably would need to be 2 volumes, includes all of Beautiful Stories for Ugly Children, which is probably the longest thing in there, and also Plop magazine.
And part 3. Oops, sorry about that.
Part 3, actually, maybe there was only 2 now that I'm looking at. No, there has to be a part 3.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. Scalp Hunter, the pre-crisis weird Western tales, Scribbly and the Red Tornado, which was a cartoon, or a cartooning strip. Sea Devils, Shadow Pack by Willingham and Sturges, I know would be really popular.
Yeah.
Sugar and Spike, another Jess Bragg favorite. Tomahawk, Unknown Soldier, both the Bronze Age omnibus and the modern one, which was Vertigo, but it wasn't like a Vertigo book because it's a DC property. The War That Time Forgot, Wasteland by Ostrander and Close. I know somebody asked about that earlier. Weird War Tales, the Bronze Age Omnibus, The Young Heroes in Love, which I know DC might not necessarily have the rights to print, but if you ask, maybe they'll build it. And Young Love, the Silver Age Omnibus. And now we move on to 2 final slides of things that we did not have last year.
Let's do it,
One
baby.
is Warner Brothers properties. Let's go. So we researched these one by one. James Abel had a huge hand in this to figure out if there were things that DC could print or if they would be actively printed elsewhere. Animaniacs, lots of Cartoon Network stuff, Action Pack, Block Party, Cartoons, and Cartoon Network Presents. Dexter's Laboratory. Fringe from the J.J. Abrams TV series as a WB property. Nobody else seems to have the rights right now. Future Quest, Pinky and the Brain had their own series. Samurai Jack seems like DC would be the one who would have the right to print it unless they licensed it. We researched the complete history of Scooby-Doo comics. It starts with Scooby-Doo Where Are You, the original years, which was printed by Gold Key, Charlton, and then by Marvel, but DC is the current license holder because it's a WB property. Then we have Scooby-Doo Team Up with various DC heroes from 2013 to 2019, and then Scooby-Doo The Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries from 2021 on. And then we have Steven Universe. All the crystal gems. And really great comic books, which Boom originally printed, but they seem to be in a rights black hole right now. And so there is a chance that DC could print them. I want to say that we missed listing a Scooby-Doo book on there. Oh, it's not on the slide, but it is on the poll because it's in this next section. So let's talk about it. So these are licensed IP, not necessarily by Warner Brothers, but that DC probably. So many people asked us last year, Omar. So we have the Adventures of Bob Hope, the Adventures of Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, Atari Force, a very popular press, Doc Savage, Hanna-Barbera, the Rebirth Omnibus, so all the Hanna-Barbera team-ups, plus also adaptations like Flintstones, Sagopost, etc. Lego Bionicle,
yes!
Seems like DC still has the rights to print it. Mortal Kombat, which we're on the fence, but it's again seems Omar has left the chat. It seems like Mortal Kombat could be printed by DC. What is happening? Here's the other Scooby-Doo book that should have been on the WB slides. So our mistake there. The Shadow, the complete DC comics from 1973 on, and yes, we're at the bottom. The Visitors Are Our Friends by Bates and Kupperberg, tying into the classic TV miniseries. That's all, folks.
Omar collapsed when I cheered for joy for Lego Bionicle on the poll.
I did. Can you still hear me, though?
We can hear you.
You're hear you.
You're just unavailable to see right now.
Yeah,
you're in the void. You're in the phantom zone, Omar.
I think my camera was like, "That's enough. That's enough."
Lego Bionicle.
That was a bridge too far.
The Lego Bionicle.
Said you will not be one of the 6 protectors of the island of Matanui. That is what happened to Omar.
Wow, you went complete super nerd on me with Lego Bionicle.
I love it, dude. I grew up with Lego Bionicle as a kid. That's my jam, man.
I get it. I was excited for Atari Force when that showed up on the slide, so I completely understand, man.
Hey, that's right, Rye. Tell him, Rye. Tell him that it couldn't handle. Oh wait, hold on. No, that's
my camera couldn't handle it. The camera can't handle. Oh, Mark Smith, that's what you wanted. Okay. Even though you can't see me, I am here. Not sure
it's probably
why
for the best.
It's okay. Wow. You are a bastard.
Yes. Oh,
wow. What a jerk. Okay, I thought we were friends. But I am still here. Not sure, man. I can't even get it to come back on. That's really strange.
I'm telling you, man. You can't be a Toa of Matanui. That is what happened. And
I don't understand what you're even saying. Okay, so we are going to kick it off. I'm going to show you how to vote like I normally do every year. So let me just get this slide going, and I don't think Josh even knows what that means. Remember what Dom said about old people using new slang, Josh?
Yeah. I don't know if you all think goon is the thing that you think it means, that I know that it means, and I do not know why we were joking about Gunmar.
I don't either. I think Josh is trying to stay young by using new slang.
That's right.
Okay. Let me present.
I love all you guys in the chat, by the way. No harm if I said any.
If Dom really loved you, wouldn't he be in the chat with you right now?
He's lying. He doesn't love anybody. All right. I am going to let you all know when to refresh.
I love you, Dom.
This stream. So it's easy. It is just like the Marvel stream. You put in your email address. We're not going to mail you anything. And you have 10 choices. And you go through each of these. Your first choice, it's again weighted voting. So your first choice is the one that's going to get the most points. You cannot vote for the same book 10 times, unfortunately, or fortunately. But yes, vote for the books you want. Don't get pressured into voting for books you don't even know what they are. Vote for the books you want.
I do love you, No Cap Arya. Just remember that.
Did you say No Cap Arya? Did he change his name? And yeah,
no,
this is all you do.
Never mind. We're not going to explain No Cap to Omar.
Right.
I know what no cap is. I've got kids. And then, of course, we always leave this here in case you all think we missed something. So you put something here. What did we miss this year? Like, I don't know what to even put here.
Apparently, we missed Looney Tunes. I'm so sorry. I think James Abel probably told me to put it on the poll, and my aged brain just missed it.
Okay. And then all you do is submit. And that, as they say, is that. So right now, let me make sure I've got the right video up. Okay. If you refresh the video, you will have the link on the video right there. And you have until Wednesday, June 11th at 8 p.m. to vote. So refresh this video that you're watching right now and go and vote.
A mod in the chat who could put it in the chat? Maybe Dom? I'm not.
Let me see if I can throw it in there.
Yeah.
If this Google thingamabob would load.
As we kick out Omar.
Yeah. Omar's faceless right now.
There we go. James didn't let us down. He's got it in the chat.
Thank you, James.
But keep in mind, folks, this is actually running a little bit shorter than the period of time we ran the Marvel poll for, because we're going to be coming back with these results a little bit sooner in a week because of the schedule, I think, of Heroes Con, which is coming up a little bit later this month. So you only have 8 days to vote for this. The poll closes on June 11th at 8 p.m. So you really got to get in there and make your votes. It doesn't matter if you vote early or late, but we'd love to see the size of this poll even exceed the one from last year, which was monstrous. Could it even blow out the amount of votes that we got in the Marvel poll? We had almost 3,000 votes on the Marvel poll. So it will be hard to beat that, but I am sure there is a lot of fervor for these DC votes. And of course, we'll be back live to talk about these results in the week that follows the close of the poll.
We'll do it live.
As Omar's microphone is significantly weaker than it was 20 seconds ago when this webcam kicked them off.
Can DC reprint Marvel's Masters of the Universe? Dom, could DC reprint Marvel material of He-Man?
I think they have the license to the. I mean, they've been reprinting a lot of He-Man in the last 6 years. I think you might have a better answer than me, though. I will be quite frankly honest with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, there's only a few properties which have really crossed over from DC to Marvel, and we haven't really seen a lot of DC doing that. Marvel in recent years is much more known for kind of like winning properties back from other places and getting the chance to publish them themselves. So that one is a little unclear. I don't know. Maybe when Omar's back, Omar has some inside intel.
I have no information.
No, yeah.
I mean, I assume they could, we did get DC versus Wolf from them. So anything is possible. Maybe it's something they don't even know to look for, right? Like, oh, there's material that we could print. Yeah. It might be a matter of just that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Put it on the suggested stuff that we missed, and we will research it thoroughly for next year. Oh, he's back for a second.
My camera is just having issues. I don't know what's going on.
It's okay. We like the audio visualizer bubble that you have now with the near mint condition logo. It's nicely animated. It's like a talking head of yourself, but without you.
Well, here I am, everybody. I still exist. I still have a body, and yes, still as good looking as ever. I promise. It's just that I'm stuck behind this stupid avatar. Shut up, Dom. I saw you. I can still see you. Just because.
I didn't even kick him off. That wasn't me. I didn't press anything.
Keyboard. I didn't
press anything. I will answer that question in a moment, Blast. Bruce asks, no Blood of the Demon by Byrne, 17 issues. Vertigo Vamp, 16 issues.
Let me see. Maybe we may have missed those. We did our best to have a community consult, but if the community did not suggest them, there's always more to add. So please, Bruce, write them in that final slide. We will research them next year. And if they are long enough, and I believe they are, we will get them onto the ball.
Yep, my camera sucks. Okay, that's okay. No problem. I'm still here. It's just let's see. Do we have any votes in so far? Let me look at the edits here.
Also, Blast, real quick to Blast. My quick thoughts on Hero Factory. I tried watching one season of the show, and I bought like 2 sets, and that was it. I said, this is not the same thing as my Bionicle. So those are my quick thoughts.
Connected this computer malfunction, and Windows does not recognize it. Yeah, because Windows sucks.
It does suck. Say it louder.
It sucks big ass balls is what it sucks. Is anybody hearing me? Am I still?
Yes, we're all hearing you.
We can hear you. That's what I'm like.
I mean,
if DC is hypothetically listening to this, man,
Windows is awesome.
Imagine the DC people are like, "Oh, we know some people at Microsoft." They listen to this.
It's just crapping out, man. This is so stupid. I'm frozen. God bless America. All right, I'm out. I'm done. And it looks like we have how many people voted so far? Anybody? Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we're waiting. You said you were going to tell us how many people voted.
Yes,
on the channel. Oh, there's only 9 responses so far. Oh no, it's because everybody's voting, so it's going really slow. Okay,
maybe perhaps.
Yep. All right. Let's wrap it up. Right? We're gonna wrap it up. Look at
we're gonna wrap it up with the yes, please. We need your audio visualizer to be the last.
Here we go.
Minutes. Thank you.
Woohoo! Last 5 minutes. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I will be contacting my Microsoft representative, and Windows sucks. I really do want to thank my wonderful co-host today, Dom. Man, you brought it. You were like, I got DC. I don't need to read Peter's maps. I got my own maps in my head, which is the way I treat Peter. So it's wonderful to see other people treat Peter.
No, don't say that. Please do not say. No, Peter is an awesome person, friend, and somebody I look up to. And the way that he maps stuff is so epic. And I wish I could map just as well as him. But,
I wish you could see my face right now.
But of course you can follow me on my channel at DomofX, where I have a couple of videos to put. Oh wow, he's back.
Oh, what's that?
Nothing.
Anyways, I have a couple of videos on my channel that are pre-uploaded and that will be coming in the upcoming days because, as many of you might know, tomorrow 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is Switch 2 launch day, and I will probably be on that platform a lot for the next week. So tonight and tomorrow morning is all the busy work, and then I go out to play some Pokemon and some Mario Kart.
I'm so jealous because I have to do the Marvel stream, and I'm like, all I want to do is play Mario Kart on the Switch too.
Hey, we could always play after. I did get, or a friend of mine did allow me into his Nintendo account. But yes, you can follow me on DomofX. Right, we'll have a couple of videos if you are interested in DC content, even DC interviews. I do talk with a lot of the creators over there, and a couple of people are going to be coming up on the channel in the next couple of months. So check that out. And of course, any of these books, check them out at comicreleases.com. And as always, thank you guys for letting me ramble on about DC and random other stuff that pops in. So much appreciated.
Thank you. And Crisis with a K. Where can people find you, my friend?
You can find me on crisis.com, where I not only blog about all the contents of these potential books, but have guides to collecting the Marvel and DC universe, as well as much of the indie universe. And I will be back now that poll season is officially all launched to talking about new releases, as I am on my Crushing Crisis channel. So I'm about a month behind on the pull list, but we are not skipping anything. The viewers have demanded I go back and scream about all the books that I've missed in the past month. So that will be coming soon. And of course, I am here on Near Mint Condition, where I'll be for future Marvel solicits, as well as an upcoming Superman Evergreen later this month. What?
Yeah, we are very, very looking forward to that. And of course, none of this could be possible, not because he fathered us, but because he created the Tigereyes Poll. That is Tigereyes.
Thank you for having me again. Go to DomofX, go to Crushing Crisis, and check out Near Mint Condition.
Thank you, buddy. God! Was almost there. The voting again will be closed on June 11th at 8 p.m. That is a Wednesday night Eastern time. And we will announce all of the top 60 is what we're doing, right, Peter?
Yes, sir.
Top 60 DC Omnis that you all voted for. That will be on Monday, June 16th at 6 p.m. And yes, we are doing a Superman Evergreen on June 26th with some other guest stars. Should be a lot of fun. And of course, my camera craps out. So either I'm going to get a new camera or something's got to give. There's a super chat. Let me get the super chat really quick before we go. Omar, tell us about Windows more. Yep, that's all I had to say. But unfortunately, I lost my mic, so you probably didn't hear me say that. That's it, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Smash that like button on the way out. If you have Windows, Wait, man. All right. We're out of here. Have a great night, everybody.